I feel like I've seen enlightenment, and I thought it was going to be about levitating and telekinesis, and it's actually just about an increased awareness of how annoying I am. Today we've decided to share something with you guys that we have been doing behind closed doors for a while now. We've been working out our relationship with it before we shared it with you. This may be controversial, but we just want you to know that we are living in our truth. This is our truth. And, you obviously don't have to do this, but we just want to share something with you. And that is radical shit talk. This is, some people call it gossip, but for us, it is something much deeper than that. I was high on poppers, and Vladimir Putin came to me in a vision and told me that I needed to spend more time talking shit. Vladimir Putin's one of my guides, that I need to spend more time gossiping about other people's lives. And so today we've been doing this for a while, but it's very vulnerable for us to share this with you. But since this podcast is a glimpse into our morning chats, sometimes our morning chats are just discussing the lives of people off the internet. And so we don't see it as gossip when we do it. It's radical empathy, actually. We are extending empathy through our projections onto the lives of people we don't know. So, Mark, why don't you pick it up from here and talk a little bit about how you have been experiencing the last 12 hours of us living inside of the lives of strangers, how that has connected for you.
First, would you
like to bracket this?
Yeah. Maybe we should bracket it for now. Would you call yourself a gossip mystic?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a gossip knot.
A gossip knot.
All right, just kidding. That was my best impersonation of this Aubrey Marcus podcast. So, that was all jokes. Obviously, we do gossip. We do unpack other people's lives. Everyone does. I'm not someone who has a moral issue with gossiping. I have a moral issue with character assassination. And character assassination, the distinction for me is like triangulation. So if I'm talking about someone and I'm trying to change your mind about them, there's something dark about that. But people are our mirrors, and we work out our own shit in the mirrors of other people. And there's some stuff going on with Aubrey Marcus right now that kind of has the new age / spirituality world kind of up in a tizzy. And so we have been digging in for the last 15 hours, trying to formulate our thoughts. And we've been doing our best not to discuss it with each other so that we could discuss it on the mic. We'll probably edit a bunch of this out, but we're going to be working this out, our thoughts about someone else's life that actually has nothing to do with us, on the mic. So you'll get to see the actual.
Yeah, I feel like it is always hard for me. Like the gossip thing always feels icky at some point to me, even when it's in, the safety of our own home and we're just going back and forth. I feel like always at some point it comes up where I'm like, I think they're great people. I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
But it's oddly like you said, it's like a mirror. It's some kind of, you can learn a lot by watching other people's journey and whatever they're doing. And so it's not like some real macro moral judgment, like people are doing something wrong. We're all caught up in like doing our own kind of experimentation and fucking up. And I think when it's also when people are on a real public stage, this happens way more, obviously.
Right.
And so, especially when someone's presenting private things in such a public atmosphere, like it's just ripe for a bunch of people to come in and project on and like kind of play out their own biases. So I think it all is like really healthy when you don't veer into character assassination and trying to claim all authority on other people's discovery of themselves. So this one was definitely a doozy for like I found it last night and then was like up late and we were discussing it a bit, but then I listened to the entire podcast, half last night and half this morning, and just so many thoughts and so many. I was recognizing a lot of things in my own kind of journey through life too, that like at certain points I was caught up in and believing something, and I could see it happening within this group of people too. And so that's really helpful, is just kind of like a lot more insight on things that I have since veered away from, but it validated more of my own like discovery with it and kind of opened that back up for me to look at in a more clear way. And fortunately, not having to go through that like public display of it and watching someone else do it, it's very clear that I was like, oh wow, it is such a deception. It's such an easy thing to fall into. And so I'm thankful to like have that, watch someone else do this, and then we can kind of pick it apart. But yeah, it's not to tear people down. It's very juicy information right now. And I think it's kind of interesting too, because I think some people, we talk a lot on here about the celebrity culture like falling and people seeing through that. And I think maybe some people didn't think that could happen in the spiritual worlds, because like the famous kind of spiritual leaders or podcasters that have become very influential in the world also have some of these similar shadows that the celebrity world does that's outside of spirituality. And so those people too are getting caught in, pretty wild shadow deception stuff that even those people that present as balanced and divine and like on the path also have some pretty radical fallings that are happening right now. And so I think this is like one of the big first ones that is occurring,
Yeah, well, you're revealing your perspective. Okay, so for anyone that's not into this, so Aubrey Marcus is like a spiritual bro. The New Age movement has like a cool kids club or whatever of people who just happen to be like hot and rich, and they're spirituality influencers, whatever. He has like a spirituality podcast, consciousness podcast. He considers himself a psychonaut. I know very little about him. He's not my cup of tea. So every time I've come across him, I'm like, yeah. This group hangs out with Matthias Stefano, which I think is the only one in that group that I feel, but you can just kind of tell that he's the outlier, the autistic guy in the corner, kind of not really whatever. Every time I have read, come across Aubrey Marcus or his crew's stuff, I'm like, this turns into an orgy when the lights go down. And I get that physically that's maybe not happening, but there's like way too much like sexuality in that for me. It's not my vibe. It was my vibe in my early 20s when it was like drugs and sexuality, whatever. But I just don't know how people are in their 40s doing that. But more power to you. It's like rich spirituality influencers who go to Burning Man, and that's kind of their personality. And so they're always dressed like they're in Mad Max, at a Mad Max sexy Halloween party or something. I don't know. And somehow that's divine feminine and masculine. It's heavily influenced by a lot of psychedelics. Yeah. And so they say a lot of the things, that we resonate with. It feels very mental to me. So anyway, he's been on Rogan, which I don't subscribe to the Rogan hate, but he has mainstreamed some spirituality stuff to the best of my knowledge.
Him and Rogan had a company on it that I think he still runs, but okay. Joe is out of it. I think Joe helped him start it. And that was their original connection. It seems as if he's distanced himself from Aubrey, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Makes sense. But
that was definitely like a huge part of his platform getting big, was Aubrey being on that podcast a bunch and talking about New Age spirituality. And he does say all the right things. I've listened to his podcast many times because of usually the guests that are on there I'm interested in. But I have always had a weird thing, like something's off with Aubrey, and I've never really been able to put my finger on it. It's a little easier now to see.
Something's out of alignment with us. That's why I'm like trying. I've spent the last 15 hours like pondering, and also like keep coming back to, okay, these situations are where we put our money, where we like actually put forth everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and you're just like not my cup of tea.
Right.
So this is not my brand of spirituality, and it's not because they have the bad brand and I have the good brand.
Totally.
But, and not that you were saying that, but we've both been trying to temper
balance
that.
It's
right.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so, and I got a little bit of this just from the podcast, but Aubrey Marcus was married to a woman. You said he's discussed being a sex addict before.
Yeah. Like in his previous lives, I guess,
okay.
Like this life, but like that was an issue that he's been very open about.
Okay. So then he was married, and then he tells a story on this podcast that everyone he knew was cheating on their partners. And I just think that's interesting because that's not actually what everyone's doing, but everyone he knew was cheating on their partners. And he was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be very honest and upfront. And so he told his partner that he feels like he needs a polyamorous relationship. And this was, I don't know, 10 years ago, 11 years. 11 years ago or 12 years ago, and she didn't want to do that, so they broke up for a little bit, and then they got back together.
I think they tried it for a little bit.
Then they tried it a little bit, and then it just wasn't for her, so they split. And then he pretty quickly got with Vylana. Terrible with names. That is his current partner, and they got married, I think, in 2020, according to my Instagram stalking, but maybe it was sooner. And so he's 45, I think. His wife is 36, I think. That'll be relevant to my points. She's gorgeous, like beautiful, and has her, I think she's some sort of relationship therapist. And then she's also like
sound healer and
yeah. And then really into this kind of like divine feminine sexuality thing.
Mm-hmm.
Also not my brand of spirituality, but so they had she only wanted to be monogamous and had experienced a lot of being cheated on, and it sounded like he just wanted her really bad, so he conceded to that, but it was like monogamy with play or whatever, like sex, but no relationships with other people, which I relate to because that's kind of my orientation to monogamy. They were in Miami and he was working out, and Spirit told him to get on Raya and look for someone for them to.
Well, apparently they've been looking for some extra play partners,
right?
And trying to kind of evolve into something a little bit more than a play partner.
No, they were just looking for play partners at that point. And then Spirit told him there's so much, to get on Raya, which is like rich, famous people Tinder. And
after a workout, which I think is important because that's when testosterone is.
You're horny, right? Yeah. Someone important. And so the second person he swiped to was this woman, Alana.
Which, by the way, is a clone of his wife. I mean, they that was the first thing when I saw it. I was like, whoa, they are identical. They look like their sisters.
Well, I would say, yeah, if you put the three of them together, the new woman looks like their daughter together. Yeah. Because she's younger. She's significantly younger. Okay. Seems, I don't know. I could be wrong. So, this begins a process with the three of them figuring out some sort of polyamorous kind of thing, and which it's pretty obvious in the podcast, not feeling good to his wife. And then they are all in, but she's doing it anyway. And then they are in Egypt, and Isis tells him that he needs to have a baby with both women. And so what they allude to in the podcast is that this has been like a literal hell probably for his wife, but sounds like they split up for a little bit, and then similar to his last marriage, it's just basically like he's like, this is my truth, and her options are to take it or not take it. Now, he did say, because this was my fucking beef, is the power dynamic here is like he has all the money and the lifestyle and whatever, and so I'm not gonna say all the money, but in a situation like this, it's hard to consciously make a decision that's right for you when it's also like, I'm not just losing my partner, I'm losing my lifestyle or whatever. That clouds the things quite a bit. But he did say, like, who knows how much of this is true, but like he did say, like, financially, I'm not.
He would support her if she chose to leave.
Yeah. And so they're saying all the right things, and, basically he's in love with someone else and she has to adjust to that, or not. And so the three of them are just talking about the stretching and the evolution of basically becoming a polyamorous couple. And I had just gotten to the part of the podcast where she has now started to experience a relationship outside of the three of them. And that's helping her understand them, you know, and yeah, so it's not well received. And obviously the impression that everyone is getting from this is just another man wanting to have his cake and eat it too. And now he's forcing this monogamist into a polyamorous relationship. And she is adamant, even though it doesn't take much for her to cry in this podcast, she is adamant that she wants this. And, and wrote a very lengthy like novel in the YouTube comments being like, don't say that I'm not choosing this, which I just believe she is correct. Like, I think that in situations like this, we infantilize women, and just make women like blind victims of men, just kind of in this archetype narrative. But she's a woman, she's a grown-ass woman in her mid-30s who's making a decision to experience something that she wants to experience. I have my own opinions on it, as do most people. But yeah, I don't know. What are your... So that's where we're at. And so, okay, so now it's being framed as radical monogamy, which is hilarious, because it's like, no, it's quit calling things to things that already have a name. Just make up your own name. It's not radical monogamy. It's polyamory. And just call it fucking polyamory. And it's a lot of like spiritual consciousness talk around something. It's very mental. Like the presentation of it is very mental space. And I find that people who do that many drugs and live in that frequency of spirituality, like they talk constantly about authenticity, but it's just not my brand. It's just not my, it's yeah.
I think that's why this is so difficult to like unpack, is because it's obviously, you know, they do a lot of drugs, and that's cool that plant medicine has a space for deconditioning, seeing the truth, understanding yourself. There's all these great things about it. And then, but it primarily does activate an awakening in the beginning in the mind. And then it's a lot of work to get into the emotional part of being with psychedelics. It's because it's a neurological thing. You know, it's changing your brain. You access higher information, higher states. And in those states, you do feel emotion. But integrating that knowledge back into the body, like in a sober state, I think creates there's a lot of work to be done there. And I am kind of the opinion now, after trying this for a long time, is like you can't quite get there and do it properly without having long times of non-altering to actually embody the stuff and then create action that follows the wisdom. And so what's interesting about this is, and listening to the whole podcast, like there's all of these intellectual narratives like just swirling around it, and they kind of have like created, in my opinion, their own like little spiritual matrix of distortions and biases that they can and like legitimize through intellectual concepts and higher spiritual concepts. But the actions underneath, and that's what, like, most of the comments, people are like, there's something off about this. And it's hard for me to say what it is, but there's something off. And a lot of those people are trying to advocate for Vailana because they're trying to say there's something deep down inside you that does not want to do this, but you're saying it's new evolution. It's an evolution in relationships, and it's divine, and it's great, but there's something off. And I think that's it's so hard to try to even talk about it, because there's a lot of what they're saying feels right and feels good, feels like cool, like do your own thing, and that you've got all of these narratives circling around it that like can kind of validate what you're doing. But there are these like holes in some of it that like just are their own distortions and misunderstandings. And I think one of the biggest ones is like what happens, I think, when you're constantly looking for psychedelics to give you the answers to your own problems in reality, you get on this track of like having to externally find things to like be okay inside. And that's a never ending line of experience. And sex can be the same thing. Polyamory, monogamy to polyamory, like you get bored with one woman and then you're like, oh, let's open it up. And under the guise of divine spirituality and new evolved relationship, this is a great way to explore the deeper parts of love. But it's just really like you just are bored and you need something new and different. And it's like psychedelics do the same thing. When you're just going back again and again and again, you're trying to fill a cup that's like emptying out every time you don't integrate the thing. And so you have to keep going and getting more and more and more. And that seems to be like one of his issues, if I'm honest. Just like, I don't know the guy, but like looking at his track record and how he, what he talks about and how he runs his life, it's like, that's a huge shadow of his. That's not really being talked about in this scenario.
Is that he's needing experience to get more and more. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's all mental.
Often a rich, like hyper masculine rich people problem, which is why we have billionaires out there like sexually assaulting kids.
Yeah.
Because they can't, it's like there's an insatiable thing inside of them.
It really is insatiable. It's never ending. It's just like the thing that I experienced with fame, where I was like, I got a house and a car and I got all these things. And then I was like, got bored with it after a month. I was like, oh, well, now I need 2 houses and maybe I need a boat. But I could see, it was like, oh, that never ends. You just can't get enough money in the world to continually satisfy this thing that once you get something, it gets old. No matter how shiny and amazing it is from where you're at, like once you get it, you just want a new thing. And so it's a similar, and I felt the same thing with psychedelics, experimenting with psychedelics on and off and like continually needing it to feel balanced and okay. And then being sober for a certain amount of time, getting bored and feeling like I was blocked, I couldn't go any further, and then needing more psychedelics. And then only come to find out I had to just go without it for long enough and go, why am I not okay? And having to go in and then start to battle your own fucking discomfort with who you are and all of that. And it's just really difficult without a psychedelic. It's really hard, but it just creates these mental things that I think is why like his podcast is so great, because he says all the right things and seems to have an awareness of reality in certain perspectives. But for someone that maybe like some of these people in the comments seem like they have done the actual integrating work, they can smell it and kind of are trying to point it out that there's a lot of like of your own deception that you're masquerading as like spiritual enlightenment, but it's like you're avoiding the actual like facing the darkness yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So
using plant medicine to justify distortion is what I would say is like,
but also he's living in the distortion. So last night, my initial response to only seeing like clips and TikToks was like 100% criticism, because I see the clip of him saying that ISIS told him he's supposed to have a baby with these 2 women. And I'm like, why didn't ISIS pass that on to the women who are supposed to give birth? Do you know what I mean?
Okay, that was, you said that last night and I was just like, damn, that's like the biggest thing. Is like, why did the man get the message of what is supposed to happen with the women's bodies and they didn't get it? Not only that, like one of the main ones, your partner, was like terrified of that was the thing. Like, and was almost like angry for a couple of days that like, that's what I have to face now. That should have been the answer right away. Maybe it wasn't ISIS. Maybe it wasn't, this is your subconscious speaking through some fucking being.
Yeah. Yeah. And this was something I noticed a lot, like back in the soberish days, was a lot of weaponizing of spirit told me. And the reality is that we are living in differentiated realities. And I am running my critiques of this dude through, well, I mean, of all three of them, to be honest, because I just, it's infantilizing to say it's just him. But my critiques of this situation through my own belief that everyone should be like I am. So, I'm struggling because I'm having so many thoughts. Okay.
Yeah, this is me this morning. I was like, I had to write shit down. I was like,
in the soberish days, there was a weaponization, like in the Facebook groups and stuff, of people saying like, Spirit told me, and then telling everyone else what to do with it. And the reality is that whatever. Oh, fuck.
Hold on, Aubrey's calling us. Yeah, I think we can just edit it. But okay. Yeah. Sorry, that was Spirit calling us.
Yeah. Spirit called and said, Jessa, land the plane. Finish a thought. Okay. I don't believe that Spirit can tell me something for you that benefits me. Do you know what I mean? Like that's so weaponizable. Mm-hmm. Like if Spirit tells me something for you, which first of all, I don't even resonate with that. I don't even resonate with like ISIS having an agenda for me. Like my version of spirituality is so much more about me and myself and my own intuition and my own body. And then understanding that the channel gets corrupted when you have an emotional investment. This is why, as someone who reads energy for a living, I have to sometimes get guidance from Karen Rontowski or have someone else pull cards when I am emotionally invested. It's why I can't do an accurate reading when I have a dog in the fight. Like I can't, because when that channel comes in, it's going to get corrupted by my own desires. And so I can't trust a message from quote unquote Spirit or like ISIS. When the results of that are like bending you to my will, like that to me, that does not compute in my version of spirituality. Now, what I do resonate with is that love is complicated. People are complicated. If this person is someone who constantly needs something outside of him, he spins it or frames it as he's a psychonaut, and so he needs to constantly be pushing the edge of experience. And you can tell that by looking at him. You can tell that by the way he carries himself and talks. And so if you choose to be in a relationship with someone like that, then these are the kind of experiences you're kind of signing up for. And his wife has agency in that she can decide that she doesn't want to do this anymore. Is that painful and horrible? Yes, but relationships are complicated. And my perspective when it comes to your partner falling in love with someone else is like, people can't help who they fall in love with. That just kind of is what it is. Did he set himself up for this situation? Sure, but they were open, like sexually. He was not secretly on an app. That's something that they're open to. They are fucking with this frequency of this hypersexualized frequency of spirituality. And that's all like open. So he meets someone and falls in love. You can't help who you fall in love with. And so this is a reality of relationships, and I think is going to become increasingly a reality of relationships as we move away from a continuity model or a commitment model of relationships, and we move into intimacy and expanding intimacy. Polyamory is going to be much bigger. It's going to be less like weird, and less in these pockets of reality. And there are a lot of people who are just naturally very drawn to that. So I've read like a lot of books about it. I've had several open relationships. I've had long committed relationships become open. I've had one-way open sexual relationships. Like I've done a lot of non-monogamy, and it is just, I think it's in The Ethical Slut. Like there is a chapter that is like, so your partner said they want to have an open relationship and you don't want that. Now what? You know, it is a reality. Like, that's the reality. He's in love with this other woman also. And I think that the desire here the tendency here is to infantilize his wife or see his wife as a victim or whatever. But I am a believer that you can't help if you fall in love with someone else. Now what everyone has to do from here is make choices,
right?
You know? And so is it because this is a patriarchal blah, blah, blah? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I've done sessions with women who were married and fell in love with someone else while they were married. Like, it happens. It fucking happens a lot. It happens more than people want to talk about. But so I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with that if it wasn't being framed as this hyper spiritual thing. Like, I don't even have to say it's bad, but they kept talking about truth and honesty. But the truth and honesty just happens to put this person, this Aubrey Marcus person, in the like hero seat while his wife is trudging the depths of her trauma. And, you know, you and I have also been here where we had just like a straight up like narcissist in our in our life, like in our daily life. And you and I were both spinning that as like their shitty behavior as like, well, I guess I just needed to face this trauma of being abused or whatever, like rather than just calling it out and just being like, hey, your behavior sucks. You know, but the person was treating me really poorly. And then I was like, I guess I just need to learn how to handle people treating me bad. And then you were like, I guess this is just how you're in community. Like, so she's experiencing like loss and betrayal and like whatever. And then
I found this on the web for experiencing like, check it out.
Whoa, Spirit is getting weird over here. Shut up, Siri. We didn't ask you anything.
Dude, I don't want Siri to be... It's just
depersonalization, derealization disorder symptoms and causes.
The bitch is just listening to us 24/7.
We gotta turn her off. Okay, continue.
So I don't know if I'm making...
No, you're making complete
I have like
sense.
I have like 50 conflicting thoughts. Like, the more I listened to it, I was like, well, you know, they're on a journey of figuring out polyamory. And if I'm just going by the words they say, I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's what they're doing. I think having children with two different women is crazy. For three people who don't have kids is crazy. But I don't know if they're really planning on doing that or if the kids were like symbolic of something. But, you know, having a child completely changes a relationship, especially when your relationship is like spiritually party, like they're partiers. That's what you're doing. You're partying. Like, that's what that is. You're putting a spiritual spin on it, but your life is like rich people partying. If just you and your wife had a baby, it's going to be traumatic for that relationship because you're going to want to keep partying and she's going to change into something else. So to bring two children in to this relationship when you seem to need your partner to get progressively young, because that's the other thing. It's like, oh, Spirit told you to have this spiritual thing. It's like, okay, it just happens to be with increasingly younger hot women. Like, it just happens to be that. Like, Spirit didn't think like, hey, why not? You know, like, I think you could use the wisdom of a woman your age, or like, hey, how about a woman with some body fat? You know, it's like just coincidentally, Spirit wants you to like bring on more and more women who are coincidentally going down in age and are like absolute smoke shows. That's just crazy how Spirit works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's just the constant talk about authenticity and whatever.
And that's the thing. I wish it was more authentic in the way that it was like, if they were just like, hey, this is us exploring something that we wanted to try out. And yeah, it's challenging in these different ways, but not labeling it as radical monogamy or it's like, it's all presented. They constantly say they're not forcing this on other people, but you are on an influential podcast. A lot of people listen to what you have to say and they try to adjust their lives and they are open, and painting it as this evolved love, divine, like this higher way of being is where I get kind of fucked up. And I start to like, then my discernment's trying to pick apart like all these other things of why it isn't that, because it doesn't feel like that. And I had to like dig through and be like, what is it that's like not congruent here? So if it was just really authentic, that it was like, yeah, this is something that we just want to explore. It's our choice. Like we're all individuals here. This is something that feels valid to us. It might not be, but we're going to go explore it. And we're doing that publicly as a service to like offer up some insight to it, you know? Then I think it may have been received a lot better, but it's this constant bypassing of like labeling everything they're doing as like holy and divine and being delivered by spirit, which is what that will fuck people up, because people are going to follow that as if it is some divine channeled thing. And I think that's where we get into this thing of authenticity. Like, what is authentic? Like, they're saying it's authentic. He's saying, Spirit told me. I'm very experienced with the mysticism and spirit connection because I do ayahuasca every fucking weekend. Then that's like, what is truly authentic? I guess that is authentic.
Yeah.
But not being able to discern in that space, what is your subconscious trying to play itself out, which I think that happens to everybody when you're doing psychedelics, especially for the first time. And that's the importance of keeping some of that shit to yourself, because it's being given to you in a metaphor of some divine purpose you're supposed to do. But it's actually like your subconscious saviorism playing itself out so you can see it, recognize it, work on it, and integrate it instead of directly applying it to life or telling other people, this is what I'm being told to do. Like, that's all. It's embarrassing. Like when you just, that's stuff I think that is like very personal, and you're supposed to keep that close to yourself and work it out. And then you finally realize like, oh, I was kind of being deceived by a deeper layer of my consciousness that I like wasn't really aware of. And that's that whole lesson. But when you're doing psychedelics back to back and you don't integrate that, spirit or source becomes your subconscious. And so he's authentic. They're all authentic and saying this stuff, but they keep, when you can always hear it in the language. Like you were saying earlier, it's like Spirit told me this, Isis told me that. The people that have done work and like figured out their intuition that is coming from themselves can pick it up in the language, that it's like source or God, whatever, would never. That's not the energy conduit. It doesn't tell you what to do. And so you can almost be sure always if it's telling you what to do, it's because you're, like you said, emotionally attached. You have a bias. You have a dog in the fight. Or it's your subconscious playing out. Or it's a higher energy fucking with you and trying to get you to do its bidding, to do something just to fuck you up. It's a trickster energy trying to teach you a lesson. And that's all beautiful to just play out, but constantly trying to weave a narrative that some mental like labyrinth that this is true divine source guiding you, that's where like all the hiccups happen.
Yeah, and I guess we can relate to this. Like, we've definitely experienced something where it's just when you're doing what's right for you and it's going to hurt other people, it is easier to, it can still be what's right for you. Like, he's in love with this woman, he should be with this woman. Like, that's, I am not someone who subscribes to the belief that just because you married someone, because then what, like, putting myself in her shoes, like, if you fell in love with someone else, to me, the fucking option is not like, well, you committed to me, so you need to stay with me, because what do I want to be with you while you're in love with someone else? Like, that part of like, the way that we pedestalize marriage and the commitment around marriage, like, does not make sense to me. Because if you have fallen in love with someone else, bummer. It's probably a symptom of something in our relationship's either closing out, or it's a symptom of the fact that we have this open fucking relationship. Like, that's the risk when you have, I've experienced it. When you have a non-monogamous relationship, you can say it's just about sex, but you are running the risk of like intimacy happening. And if it happens, it was supposed to happen. Like, love is not something you can control. So I don't have an issue with that part at all. And there's a ton of triggered people in the comments. And we know this, like, people have this, like, specifically women project our own, like, men cheating, whatever trauma onto it, but it's just like he fell for someone else. It just, that is what it is. The decisions now to be made are, do we want to try to do this together, or do I want to go like move on with my life and find a different, like, I don't have an issue with that truth. I think that the monogamy commitment model, I'm against a 30-year-old you making a commitment for 40-year-old you that like you're expected to stick to if it doesn't align in 10 years. I'm against what that does to personal growth. So he is being authentic in who he is, but where it seems to get cloudy, and like the new girl is just like, whatever, down for whatever. But like where it seems to get cloudy with his wife is the hyper spiritualizing it. And this is something where I feel like you and I have experienced where, you know, doing something that's like best for us and ultimately was definitely the right move long term. It's easy to just kind of, I guess, spiritually bypass. Like, it's easy to only pay attention to the zoomed out version of things, where what's really helpful, if you're mature enough for it, and we have experienced not being mature enough for that, is to get down into the nitty gritty of the reality. So the reality is you have fallen in love with someone else. And that means that the relationship that you have agreed to and committed to with your current wife either has to end or change. And you're like, it's putting her in a shitty situation. It can both be right for you and putting her in a shitty situation, and like sitting down and getting into the emotions of it and the reality of it without the fucking spiritual spin, which I'm getting the hypocrisy here. Like, we obviously know the spiritual spin, and we you obviously know what happens when you come into a situation like this altering constantly, because that's like, to me, it's the drugs. Like, to me, it's the fucking, and these people are high more than they're sober. It's very obvious by the way they talk. They are floating outside of their bodies. Everything we're talking about here is mental. The wife is experiencing an enormous amount of like emotional anguish, but it's all being dealt with, from my listening them for a couple hours, it's all being dealt with mental shit. And it's being turned into this super spiritual, which everything is spiritual, but like it's being turned into this super spiritual trauma healing, whatever. And that's what she's getting out of it. And that's fine. But it is like, it's being talked about like it's the super authentic, honest thing, but it's the honesty that I'm not seeing a lot of honesty there. And it might be the honesty that they're all capable of, you know, but there is a lot of like, the honesty is just, this sucks. I fell in love with someone else. This is what I want to do. I got horny at the gym, you know, or even like maybe his intuition did tell him that someone was supposed to come into your life or whatever. I don't think that everyone has to be monogamous. You know, I think you can be polyamorous. It's clear that he wants to be polyamorous. It's clear that his last relationship ended because he wants to be polyamorous. Then when he tells the story of this woman, it's kind of like his wife, he's like, I want her. You already know you're not monogamous though. So what it sounds like is the slow creep into polyamory. But that's subconscious. He doesn't know that about himself. It's very loud when you hear him talking about it. But one thing that really stood out to me, like, is she's choosing this experience. And I think that we have this mythology of man bad, leave his beautiful wife to go blah, blah, blah. And that's real and it's a thing. But it's like she's choosing to have this experience. And when she says she's choosing to, she is. Now, is she turning herself into knots because she's not ready to conceive a life without him? Yes. Is she thinking that this is like, she said she's never had a monogamous relationship because she's always gotten cheated on. So when she said that, I was like, okay, well, you are being pressurized to figure that out,
yeah, totally.
you know? And then it does seem like she is just becoming polyamorous, but that is like, there are people who are naturally polyamorous, and I believe that's a whole thing, and I think we're going to see more of that. And then there are people who get pushed, who try to turn themselves into a polyamorous person because their partner wants to be polyamorous. It's extremely common. I have a friend who had like a whole vlog about that, and they ended up breaking up because like at the end she found out she wasn't. You know, so I just, yeah, it's the spirit told me. Like, if spirit told you, then spirit would have fucking forwarded the message to me.
Yeah, totally.
I think whatever this thing that they're doing actually makes a lot of sense because they are just spiritually partying. Like, so this messy shit makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's why, like, from the higher place, you can just see they're all making the choices, and it's right because we're talking about it like this. We're getting a lot of growth from it. A lot of people in the collective are there all unpacking it, and it could have just been for that. And they were used to make those decisions that like are going to teach lessons to them in the long run and teach a bunch of lessons to other people. You know, I think one thing that is also clear that they're making these decisions and they are being influenced by an energy that is like coming out of the over drug use and the kind of bypassing. They also, and this isn't like some biased take, but I think it's definitely influencing it. And it's a thing that stuck out to me in like seeing this happen and knowing a little bit about his past and then my own exploration with magic and hermeticism and all these like trickster kind of modalities that can be used to garner wisdom, growth, and change, and are they're useful tools. But they're also like ancient, highly powerful and paradoxical tools. And a lot of people get caught up in that stuff because of the lack of understanding of what's actually reality is and the kind of the matrix of it and the trickery of it. And so there is an abundance of confidence that is pulled from psychonauts and from like, you know, experiencing a lot of altered states. Like you do get this like kind of radical confidence and you start playing with these paradoxical tools. And Hermeticism is trickster in nature. It's powerful and there's like deep truths in it, but all these deep truths exist in like really complicated paradox. Hermeticism comes from like Hermes, and that's trickster. That's like a character that has taken many different faces in history, and it is a trickster. It's not ever to be identified with and to be like feel like you are one with it, because it's meant to constantly make you grow. It's like all it is. It's like this gas that's always there that if you need to be, you know, dislodged from a stagnation that you're in your reality, start playing with that and it'll throw you on your ass, but you're going to grow from it. But when you identify with it and start calling it in, and it's like, you know, you sent me a video last night of like one of Valana's like Instagrams or stories where she's like doing this kind of sensual magic thing and calling on Kali and like basically like saying, possess me and do what you will with me. And that's like, okay, well, that gives a lot of information to what's going on right now. If that's what you've been doing, and I'm sure they're all doing that within the ayahuasca ceremonies and like the education that comes with that, like you start to call on these entities that have real power and they have real effects and it's magic, and you come in confident thinking like you can use it for your own good. It's going to throw you on your ass in a way that you cannot discern. It's not meant to do that. It's like a way higher force. It's ancient and it's like, it's so powerful. So that makes a lot of sense. Like when you see that in context of like what they've been playing with, and for a long time they've been seen as like these really great influencers and spiritual teachers. It's like only a matter of time when you're playing with that energy. Like you do get that value up front. You get some stuff that's like good wisdom and you can share it, and it's like benefiting you materially and for your status. And then they build you up like that, and then boom, you get like swung around into something where you get a really great lesson. And that's like this, that's what's going on to me. It's like, and so at that level, there is no judgment. It's beautiful. It's like, whoa, but it's public, and they're presenting it as this divine balance thing that is like, oh, you're in the trickster energy. Like you believe it's something that should be shared to help people grow in a way. It's doing that, but not in the way you think. It's doing it in where we're all kind of learning how not to do it, I guess. Not from a judgment way. It's like, it's paradoxical. Yes, it's like all valid. But that to me was like, it's interesting for my own like journey in playing with that. Like very little did I ever play with Hermeticism, but because the more I learned about it quickly, I was like, oh, this is not something to play with. I'm a novice. And like, I think we all are. And you're playing with something that's like access to other dimensions of awareness and real power to do things with, to build worlds, to pull material success and all kinds of things that like, if you don't know how to play with that, like you're using a nuclear weapon to like light a fire, and you shouldn't be playing with that kind of power, you know? And so for me, it's like a really educational way to look at like, this is what could happen when you do that kind of stuff. And it is a tool. It's not to say don't experiment with it, but it's way outside of the bounds of where most people are at. And I think we have to like, at a certain point, like soberly look at ourselves and be like, I'm not ready for that. I got enough things going on, just getting my own orientation and knowing what is my authenticity when I'm feeling connected to source or something that's inspiring me to change and do something different, make a decision a certain way, making sure that that's not some other part of your subconscious directing you. It's an emotional thing that you're bringing into it, or it's some other energy trying to throw you off. That's enough. That's like hard enough to figure out.
Yeah.
Than trying to go to some hermetic practice that's like going to make all of that way more complicated. And you can't navigate it if you don't know who you are actually. And I think that's also it's like a great example of like so much talk about authenticity and just do what's right for you. And so like on that surface level, that's what they're doing. But you can also see within this, like what they think is their authentic self is actually like a shadow subconscious thing trying to play itself out. So yes, it's authentic, but this is where we can get into the paradoxical thinking of like how to find what it actually is authentic to yourself at any given moment when you're going through transformation and growth and discovery of newer parts of yourself.
Yeah. It's
never really ending the discovery of more aspects of yourself, because if you think about it, if we're all slices of the one, we're going to be doing that until we get back to one. And that's a pretty far ways away considering where we're at, like pretty divided down in a very dense 3D level. You're always going to be discovering more and more and more and more and more. And I think a lot of this is like novice spiritual people coming in with like a real big ego still, trying to wield way higher concepts and higher tools that is like all bypassing stuff. And that's where I think we can get really caught up in a lot of distortions and like physical turmoil that has to play itself out when you're trying to jump levels and jump to a different class of lessons, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. It's so confusing because the authenticity conversation feels like a loop sometimes. So when I look back at like a past relationship that was long, it's like 10 years. And the only way I know how to describe, like when I was in it, I thought it was great. And then one day it just became obvious that like, oh, I can't be myself here. But I didn't know that for a long time. I didn't consciously know that for a long time because I was fawning and people pleasing so much that I was not aware that I was not being myself. And I wasn't able to know I wasn't being myself until I reached a point of consciousness that I realized that, right? And so it's something for a long time I struggled to settle into this relationship and kept saying like, well, who knows, we might end up not, because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to wake up one day and realize I'm not being authentic here. And so the way I described that relationship is it was perfect for what I was capable of at that time. Like I wasn't vulnerable. I wasn't ready to emotionally wake up yet. I wasn't ready to become conscious and set boundaries and stuff. And so that relationship was resonant for where I was at. And I would say I'm a far more authentic version of myself, definitely far more conscious version of myself. But in 10 years, this might seem like dead asleep to me because I don't know because of the way that consciousness unfolds. And so there have definitely been times in my life where I was doing what his wife seems to be doing from my projections. She seems to be turning herself in knots to be okay with something. And she seems to be getting a lot out of it. I mean, she's conscious. She seems, she is taking advantage of this opportunity to heal a trauma that had to do with jealousy with her mom or whatever. And so she's getting something out of it. So I can't say that this isn't aligned for them. It seems aligned for them. I'm obviously don't have a dog in the fight and I don't know these people. And so it's easy for me to see their shadows, but it's also easy for me to just project that their path is the wrong path because I'm not a spiritual partier. I do know that this type of person represents a lot of the New Age movement. And so that is something that is that aspect of the New Age movement, that ungrounded partying thing, Burning Man-esque thing that makes spirituality and consciousness seem so unhinged is like something I have found annoying in the past. I kind of don't care now. Where I land is like, I don't live on that frequency. I get it. I think early awakening, club drug, raver version of me, like I get it. I don't know how you sustain that at our age, but like cool. But it's just not my frequency. It's not the way that I relate to my consciousness journey and whatever, but it is authentic for who they are and what they are operating at. And then part of me is like, is there supposed to be psychonauts? Like, is there supposed to be people never grounding and just kind of like only mentally, intellectualizing the experience? Are they supposed to be pushing the edges? I do believe there are many people right now are supposed to be changing the relationship paradigm,
I think there's supposed to be psychonauts, but like when we say supposed to, it's like, I'm saying it on the line of like everything's supposed to exist.
Yeah.
As far as like wanting to have balanced growth and like actually make lasting change, its own, I feel like you can only get so far with it. It's very useful for a certain amount of time, but it's also slips into like some serious danger where you create a web of deception because you haven't integrated it and you haven't been able to ground and all those things. And so like it can throw you off into a spiritual matrix that has like now captured you. You tried to exit the normal reality matrix and went into the spiritual world and created a new matrix of like labyrinth of trying to get back to yourself, because you're calling your subconscious and all of the things that are part of you, you're calling it something external. You're calling it ISIS. You're calling it spirit. And it's not, you're potentially not really connected to a valid source or higher self. But it is all paradoxical because it is authentic in the moment. So like that's what they're supposed to do, but
when you're looking at these mirrors, I guess it just comes down to like looking at it and saying, is this something I could add to my life? Why does this make me like, I'm finding myself trying to say like, yeah, that's fine. But, you know, I'm like, why does it rub me the wrong way? I guess is the question at the end of the day. And it's like, well, it partially rubs me the wrong way because I have the same conditioning that many of us have, which are just like, Jesus Christ, men, you know?
There's a lot of that in it, you know, and like I agree, I don't want to infantilize women, and there's gaslighting on both sides, but like it's just pretty obviously like a lot of the issue is him, and it's being, you know, the women, especially like the wife, is having to deal with a lot of like bending herself out of proportions, and to be honest, in the end of this, time will only tell, but I bet you she comes out with the most growth and actually the most capability of falling into balance because of what she's going to learn in this lesson. But like materially, he's the one winning in the situation. And I think that's what, like, as far as the divine masculine, divine feminine trying to come into balance again, I do see this as being like a really interesting, complicated example of how the corrupted masculine can like weave its web over the powerful divine feminine and like masquerade as being in balance and union when it's not that way. And it's all mental, very intellectual, and so it like makes sense on the surface. But I think that's why there's a lot of women in the comments going, there's something wrong, please don't do this, Vailana. Like, stand up for this like divine feminine thing. Like, this ain't it. You're kind of being duped. And
yeah, it's not the polyamory.
No.
It's the like, it's that it's clearly not what she wants. And so this is something that interesting that comes up a lot in sessions. So specifically with younger people, there is kind of a pressure spiritually to be poly. There is this belief that it is more spiritual or more evolved to have transcended your jealousy and be open in your relationships. Like this, and
this
I
is really
think,
interesting.
Yeah. And I do think that this is an expression of the 59th. It's the end of we are going to see a complete change in sexuality and everything else, specifically with, you know, people who are like under 35 right now.
Do you think that's ultimately to balance what has been like corrupted monogamy, like not a good example of that, or balance like the patriarchal kind of fucking mess we're in? Is it needs to like blast open into like free, and then it's going to come back to like a new, more powerful balance? Yeah,
I think that we are reconciling what I call like commitment first, like unconditional commitment relationships. This is the book that I'm trying to write is actually about this. So we pedestalize because continuity and commitment were constructs in the cross-up planning. We here in the West, in this fucking cross-up planning program, we pedestalize the idea of a relationship that lasted from 20 to 70. And because it's continuous, right? And we go like, well, that's a commitment. You made a commitment. You stuck to the commitment. I don't believe in that at all. I am a completely different person. Like, I've been married twice, and there's no part of me that goes that those two marriages were failures. I was married. I got teenage married, and obviously that was never going to work. And we got married because his dad was a fucking pastor, right? And I got pregnant. And then I was married in my 30s, for the entirety of my 30s, to someone that made sense when I was a person who had just gotten clean and who made sense like through my 30s. And then I reached a point where I was becoming a completely different person. And that relationship just was not supportive of me becoming a completely different kind of person. Like, we didn't fit anymore. And then you have been the relationship for most of my 40s, and you and I make sense in a way that I've never made sense with anyone else. I'm the most myself in this relationship. But if you and I had met in 2013, we wouldn't have even we wouldn't have made sense. You wouldn't have noticed me. I wouldn't have thought of you that way. You were like, the age difference between us would have been much more profound when I was in my early 30s and you were in your early 20s. It just wouldn't have worked. And so if I had met you when I married my first husband, that would have been really fucking weird because you were in like third grade. But like you wouldn't have made sense at any point in my life. And I hope that you make sense when I'm 70. But that won't be because we fucking made a commitment to not grow as people so that we could stay in this relationship. And so when we talk about our grandparents having stuck together, to me, it's morbid. To me, it's like someone in that relationship, probably her, had to sacrifice who she was and stop growing in order to fit him.
And just a side note, that's what was one word that kept bugging me is listening to this
driving
podcast.
Me nuts.
Is what is the word? It's like they were using the word sacrifice, but they were using it as some spiritual like gift thing. This is what I'm doing is having to sacrifice. And like it wasn't sitting with me right. There's like a lot of sacrifice for the promise of higher love when it's like that's not what it
Well, they're talking about relationships or sacrifice. Well, okay, I don't believe that. I don't resonate with that. There is some degree of sacrifice, but
it's almost like a better word is like discipline or something. It's like there's like I don't know where I'm going with that, but like they're sacrificing is like giving up parts of yourself for somebody else. And I don't think that's like what is healthy.
If relationships are sacrifice, then sacrifice the fresh piece of ass. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
There was so much talk about.
And that's discipline. I mean, on his part, it's discipline. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but this isn't. This is about him being free and being whoever he wants to be, which I actually don't disagree with.
Right.
But then we're going to pull out the sacrifice. Relationship is a part of sacrifice rhetoric for what she needs to do. Yeah. It's like, well, fucking pick one. Because if it's sacrifice, then why don't you sacrifice having a new girlfriend?
And that's what I'm saying. On his part, that would be discipline.
Where's
is
his
a healthier
sacrifice?
Word. Right.
And so it's just hours and hours of talking about like stretching and fucking like whatever. And that's like, okay, it's cool. I don't even disagree with that, but it's very one-sided. It's very conveniently also just a hotter, younger woman, which, is so cliche. It's crazy. It's like, well, why didn't God want you, since this was God's idea, why didn't God want you to like stretch into like maybe dating a woman your age, or like, why didn't God want you to maybe like stretch and experience something not just like over the top aesthetic? It's just, it's a combining of the new world ideas, which like, cool, I agree with, like expanding into new intimate whatever.
It feels like though they're bringing with them old conditioning that hasn't been dealt with. It's like shadow conditioning, trying to loft up into this like new higher way of being, which almost could be said as like maybe it's a fourth density way the relationships happen or something, but like you're bringing old world 3D conditioning.
Oh, so that's what I was saying. So in the cross of planning, we love the idea of sacrifice, stick it out, see it to the end, whatever. And because there was no, like, authenticity was not important. And so you had women, a lot of these grandmothers that we lift up, like they had to do an enormous amount of fucking drugs in the 50s just to survive the life that they were living with your grandfathers, right? And some old people were hella in love. They found their person cool, but a ton of people stayed together because women weren't allowed to have bank accounts and shit. You know what I mean? There was no fucking option. But we have been conditioned to pedestalize that and see relationships that don't last as failures. And then there's also a lot of pressure to stay in relationships that aren't working. Like, I don't like you. You don't like me. I liked you 10 years ago. I don't like you now. Like, and we're fighting all the time. Like, I don't believe that people should stay together in those situations. I think that's an insane way to look at things. And so a lot of younger people are, they've watched their parents do some form of that, or their parents got divorced or what, so they're kind of disillusioned with the old thing. And so they're looking for something new. And I think that it is polyamory for some people. I mean, my 15-year-old has like known they were going to be polyamorous since, I don't even know, since they were tiny, like before it had been introduced to them as an option that culture has. It was just like, Phoenix was just like, I don't think I could be with just one person. I also don't know, like, I would have to have my own room. Like, Phoenix is just kind of known. And so I think relationships will be very differentiated, just like people will be. And this heteronormative kind of rules of like monogamy or whatever, like, I'm monogamous. I know that I'm monogamous. It's exhausting to me to manage more than one relationship. In past relationships, I've been open to sexual things. I think that part of my life is probably, I'm just too old for that shit now at this point. It just sounds exhausting. If you came home and told me that you fell in love with someone else, I would probably move on, Now, when I was younger and had more energy, my answer may have been different. There was a part of me that loved the love triangle. I've been on every side of the love triangle. It's some sort of karmic shit I needed to figure out. I just had like way more bandwidth for the exhausting drama of it all. But yeah, I have a lot of shame when I feel jealousy. And when I was younger, I definitely thought, I need to burn that out of me by putting myself in these insane love triangle relationships, so that I could get to the bottom of my evil demon jealousy. But now it's just like, no, I just don't like, I like what we have, which is a relationship that is a foundation for us to do all these other things. And I don't want my entire life to revolve around trying to survive this relationship. And if you brought another person in, my entire life would revolve around trying to survive this relationship, because I do have trauma. I do have abandonment stuff, and I've healed that stuff enough to function in life, but I'm just not going to put myself into a situation that feels unsafe. And that's the same thing I learned right before I met you in my situationship, is like, same thing. I was like turning myself inside out, which is like, I should be able to handle this. And it's like, no, my childhood me was put into unsafe situations and was abused by a parental figure and abandoned by both parents at one point or another. And so I do have the capacity to be securely attached, but I can't be securely attached when I'm in an unsafe situation with gray area. So I told you as soon as I met you, like, I can't be in some sort of vague thing. I have to be in committed relationships, because otherwise this part of me shows up that's like I end up in like a power dynamic thing, because I just need the foundation to be safe. So it's not good for me to be in a polyamorous fucking gray area situationship. What are we ship? Like, whatever. And that's not because I have more work to do. That is just kind of the reality. Just like I have a different metabolism than other people do, and I have a different immune system than other people do. Like, I'm highly sensitive. I just need, the relationship needs to be solid and what it is. And if at some point you fall in love with someone else, we'll cross that bridge, but that will likely be the end of the road for us, because I'm not going to put myself into some something that's deeply dysregulating. I can work on this until the cows come home, but I'm monogamous. Yeah. And so that's what I think. There is this shaming in some spiritual circles that, like, you're not evolved enough. And if you're not polyamorous. And I just think some people are gay, some people are trans, some people are polyamorous. That's it. Like, some people are wired for it. And you usually find out you're wired for it because you have a desire for it, and not because your partner said, fucking, shit or get off the pot. Like, So this is a monogamous probably person, like the whole conversation. I've seen this a million fucking times where she's like, and then I met someone else and it was cool. And then Aubrey Marcus is like, yeah. And a lot of men want to be able to do that, but then they struggle when the woman wants to have sex with someone else, but I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And it's like, he is right. I've experienced that as someone who has let partners fuck other women for years and then been like, I'm going to, and then watch them freak out. He is right. But also there is still a power dynamic when she doesn't want to. And I've also been her. I've also been like, gone out and tried to be, tried to fuck someone else or tried to get intimate with someone else because I'm trying to get my power back because he's on a date with someone. Like it's
so complicated, dude.
It's so complicated.
I've always been curious about polyamory. I've never had the real pull to want to be able to do it. The only thing that was attractive to me was the conquering the jealousy of it, like being able to not want to blow my brains out imagining the woman I love with another man. But that's that thing where sometimes you're just like, yeah, I mean, I would love to go do stand-up comedy because I'm so terrified of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'll ever do that. And I just, that's the only thing that has ever intrigued me. It's been oh man, if I had nothing else to live for, I'd want to go try to conquer that. But I think the drama of it and the complications that all come with it, managing all of that seems so hard. It's really challenging just to have a healthy relationship and be able to be yourself and grow alongside each other and not tear each other up. And, all the growth that comes with that. Having to do that with multiple people, it's not for me either. It is interesting to see that there are, a lot of new beings coming into the world kind of set up with different energies and seeing it, genuinely being pursued is interesting, where there seems to be some balance of it. And that's great. I like the idea of a bunch of people being able to raise children together. And if it can be healthy, there's just a lot of definitely unhealthy versions of it I've seen, or masquerading as some higher thing when it looks like that for a year, and then you hear later the story, the thing just imploded and there was all kinds of abuse going on. So it's ripe for that too. And it does feel like a higher concept of something that we will eventually get to see more of once we all are matured and evolved and really balanced. And like anything, that's in the trajectory, but there are people trying to get there really quickly without doing the inner work and the healing. And then that's when we're seeing them kind of fall off and not work. So I don't think it's throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a space for that. But I also think, and someone just thinking about this morning, I don't know, monogamy has always fallen under this overly committed thing, you're talking about. That's the examples we've seen. And I can only think of maybe one or two relationships that I couldn't even name the people, but I know they're in my life, that I've seen examples of really healthy monogamy that kind of has this thing, if we fall off track, we will separate. We're not committed by law, we are married by law, but they are, it's a really healthy, energetic commitment to each other that is can expand and grow. It's so rare though. Most, I think, of what we see as monogamy is, and why I think there's a lot, a desire to try to evolve into this open thing with multiple partners, is because we haven't seen really healthy examples of it. They're always cheating going on, lying. And I mean, hearing my stories from my parents about their parents, it was all accepted that they knew granddad was out, cheating, and mom just tried to not pay attention to it, but knew it was there,
Yeah.
and they just dealt with it. And that was heroic for them, just dealing and staying committed. And you're right, all the different parts of reality that were pressures then, financially, status, all these things were obviously going to make a woman just deal with the pain so she didn't lose everything. But what I'm understanding more and more, like even just within our relationship and the depth that has continued to evolve, is like something with monogamy that is like more of an energetic thing. Like it doesn't have all of these like physical attributes of it. Like if we get old and we're not attracted to each other anymore, then we'll have to separate because all we care about is being physically attracted. Like there's so much more in relationships. And I have always been oriented more towards feeling drawn to energy from people, you know, their independence, the way they hold themselves, their confidence, and their creativity, things like this that are not like necessarily physical. Obviously, I'm attracted to physical attributes as well, but like that was always more the core part of like what pulled me into relationships, which was also why I was known in like some friend circles, like having a very exotic taste in women because it was like all over the map. Physically anyways. And the more I learn about like the energetic kind of union that can occur, the like potential spiritual like amplification that can come from a commitment like that is like energetic and involves autonomy and like room for growth and room to be able to like grow in a different direction if needed be, that there's something that like is really powerful within that I think we haven't been able to understand from culture's version of monogamy. And so I think that there's something there that is like, again, like we're all just kind of throwing out monogamy because most examples we've seen is like cheating and lying and like not honesty. But the examples in my head that like are relationships that were really like beautiful, balanced, healthy monogamy, it always did feel like when they're going to die, they're going to like go to the same place and in the afterlife, or they're going to go to another, they're going together. And there's like a real amplification in each individual from that union and from the like discipline that goes along with that and the like the courage to like grow and trust. All of those things are like, again, I don't think we've seen many good examples of that. And I think in our relationship and exploring it, like I'm feeling that and finding that. I think we discover that more and more. And yeah, we have like little bumps in the road that we have to work through. And when we do work through them, there is like an expansion and more connection, like individually to our higher selves or source or whatever you want to say it is, that feels like this is kind of bumping up into what people label as like divine masculine and feminine union. And I think that term is thrown around a lot in the spiritual new age. I mean, as these individuals did when they were first together, their whole thing was like, this is sacred union. This is like, I'm a masculine, feminine, divine masculine. This is my divine feminine. And we are, you know, paving the way for new relationships. And then it turned into this. It's like, okay, well, what was that before, you know? So I don't want to like just throw that around and say that's what we're doing, but I do think that there's something to discover more there, and it's hidden underneath the distorted like version of monogamy we've seen that hasn't primarily been expressed on an energetic spiritual level. And so much of like some ancient, you know, teachings that people do talk about this kind of spiritual connection and that union, that there is a lot of discipline involved, but discipline in a way that's healthy, like not playing into what culture has given us as far as like the easy, quick sexual desires of the physical world, you know, and the self-pleasure in sex, instead of looking at it as like there's a different level of intimacy that can happen that isn't immediate satisfaction and gratification. It's like a disciplining the desire to just materially satiate one's individual existence. And it's like working towards something else. And so I'm like, you know, I'm a novice in it. I don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, but I just feel like there's something there that.
Yeah, you hear of things like sacred marriage or like divine union or whatever. You hear them like thrown around in the New Age movement. There was a whole part of Law of One that talked about that. And I found myself rejecting that because I guess I'm warming up now to like longer term relationships. But at that point I was still feeling pretty jaded that like relationships can't last a long time if you're transforming. Like you have to be open to letting go of each other. And I do still believe that, but I am like, I guess starting to see a way in which if you are with someone that you are really compatible with, there is potentially, we'll see, the potential to grow in the same direction authentically, you know? But that is building a relationship on something that is constantly opening your hand and letting them grow. And
that what was so beautiful about it is like when you can really be honest and you're doing that, you have like autonomy is the first rule. Then there's also like space to like kind of mirror each other and like call each other out on things with the trust that you're not doing that to like control me or power over me. You're showing me a deeper part of myself, and that if I am capable of looking at it and trusting that you're seeing something that I need to pay attention to for my own good, and like for the betterment of the relationship, that's what I'm talking about, amplification in the spiritual like connection. It's like, I can't deny that when we came together, there was like a mass like boost in our individual evolution and like healing and development. And it's tough at times because you do have to like hit up against deep traumas that like need to be reflected, and you kind of go through it. And it's like, there's no fucking blueprint of how to do it, but that's so powerful. And like, that's what I think is what I'm kind of like garnering from some of these ancient teachings and the raw material and the seas, the Cassiopean material. It says the same thing. It's like, there's something hard to describe from like the physical reality that's caught up in like sexual desire and all this like personal gratification from our connections that traversed beyond that. There's this like, that's why there's a sacred union, is because there is a like quickening to the process. Not like we're trying to go quick, but there's some kind of like amplification that creates a really like sturdy ground for evolution and growing together that like it's really cool. And I think that there's something to that I think we're all seeking, but we're having to navigate the fucking monogamy like bullshit that is like presented to us as like what we're supposed to do, and the way marriage is like all caught up in laws and commitment, and like if you leave you owe them money and you have to child support, all these things that like make it so scary to do. And then we miss the energetic connection, just like I think nobody was taught that sex has like a whole other energetic component to it. We all just think it's like coming and orgasm and great, and it makes babies sometimes. And then you get this thing where it's like, yeah, I'm bored with this one, let me go get another one that I can, and it doesn't create this like energetic connection that I think is like a whole other world. And so I don't think we've ever really been taught in culture that there are these other potentials of connection and intimacy and sex and all of that stuff. One side note, just as a thing came in my head that the C's say that I find very confusing and interesting to sit with, is that the desire to connect with someone sexually, like on a lot of levels, is like strictly 3D. And so like at these higher levels of higher densities of existence, sex isn't a thing, which I was just like, what? That's like the peak of 3D existence. Is like the orgasm is like, that's what source is supposed to be like, right? There's a lot of people say it's like this, the pinnacle of feeling and experience at this level.
Which explains how you get people to keep coming back.
Exactly. And that's, they say that it's like, that's a huge reason why the culture is riddled with like this sexual tension that is like, a lot of religions say don't do it, but then that creates more desire to do it, and it expresses itself unhealthily. And but I think the thing is like there's a different way to connect and with other individuals at higher levels that is not strictly based on like an orgasmic feeling, but it's like almost the equivalent in connection with each other that, maybe it isn't physically the same sensation, but there's something else there that is like the equivalent. But they say, like one of the quickest ways to get to fourth density is to be celibate. And that's not to say like that's what you should do to
celibate here, celibate there.
Yeah. That's not to say like that's what you should do to get to fourth density, because that's obviously like a service to, you're trying to get to fourth density, so you cut off a natural desire. But it to me, it gives some kind of like idea of like not to cut that off, because you still feel the desire to do it, and that is a way to feel intimacy and connect at this level. But I could see at a certain point where you don't need that anymore to feel intimacy, to feel connection. Like you don't need the physical act anymore. And that is eventually when you start to move into a different density where you're not attached to the physical body. Because I would say that's one of the strongest things that keeps us wanting to be in a body, and might even be right. Higher density beings, like I would love to go down and be a third density being because I get to fuck. Like it's a huge part of it.
We think there's a reincarnation trap. It's actually just like jizzing.
Bunch of horny beings.
It's your own horniness.
I think it's all connected in some weird way. But anyways, just drop that paradoxical information because it's interesting to think about.
So are you proposing to me right now?
No, I was actually seeing if we could open it up to a poly relationship. I wanted to bring you on this public platform here and ask if we could open the relationship. Oh, so what next? Where do we go from here?
I don't know. Was that a whole podcast?
Oh, that's my bladder cat. My bladder cat. We're at an hour and 37.
I feel like that's its own thing. Yeah. Otherwise, I need to eat and caffeinate. All
right. Well, I'm doing new sessions on polyamory and hermetics. If you want to book a session.
Okay, wait, there's more. It's 24 hours later. I'm afraid that yesterday I was having a hard time honoring like what my gut instinct was on this thing, because I'm like constantly scanning for whether or not I'm being a hypocrite. So I think I was like kind of mentally scanning. So it's complicated. I think these are grown adults and they're going to figure it out themselves. But I think since they are portraying this experience as some higher consciousness thing, it's worth kind of unpacking the shadows of it.
Yeah, it's such a great lesson, I think, for everybody. Like that's why it's weird. I don't know, because it's like somebody's like kind of personal issues that they made public.
Well, I mean, they're influencers. So when you're an influencer,
yeah,
I would say even more than celebrities, because a lot of celebrities aren't necessarily offering their lives up to be, examined or whatever. But when you're a spiritual influencer and then you do a 2.5 hour podcast about something, and you're already like a spiritual podcaster.
Yeah, you're asking for projections and people to unpack it. I just think it's like there's a lot of really interesting information that's helpful to people actually to see, and that's why it's like so complicated and difficult to unpack.
And it's one of these things too where, and this just is what it is, but I think there is healthy polyamory, and I think there are people who are wired for it and who are made for it. However, there is a lot of bad polyamory. There is a lot of shadowy people being into it for reasons that they're not being honest about, I call it the slow divorce. When people have like a committed monogamous relationship, and I'm not saying this is what they're doing, but I experienced this at the end of my marriage where it's bad and we don't really know. We're not quite ready to leave yet. So we open the marriage and it's almost like,
just to confirm.
Yeah, it's like, well, maybe this will give us more space, and then you just kind of hope one of you falls in love and kind of leaves or whatever.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of sessions with people who are opting into a slow divorce. But a lot of times in situations where people are coupled, it's messy, and it's not, I think my beef with this whole situation is the applying divinity to it.
That was my whole thing.
Yeah, and I think there is a mirror here to something we are all, I don't want to say guilty, but we've all done, and we all probably will experience again. And that is conflating God talking to us with just our own subconscious desires. And this is why I believe that, like, you can be hip to aliens and channeling and psychedelics, but if you don't know yourself, you don't know your subconscious motivations, you're not awake. You're not fully awake, and I'm not saying I am fully awake, but like decades after waking up to that stuff, I started to wake up to the things that actually make me tick and my actual motivations. And that was the hardest shit for me to integrate and to face. Not saying I've completely faced it. I still experience things where I go like, oh, I didn't know that's why I was doing that.
And I've heard you say before too, that you had to weed through all the different voices that were in your head.
Yeah.
So like, that's their version of like, Spirit said this, Isis said this. And you've said before that like there was a lot of your life where it was like a bunch of voices, and you had to kind of weed through which ones were the actual, like where the real message was. That wasn't your subconscious, your fear, whatever. And eventually got to a point where you honed in on one voice and those others started to fall away. And I feel like that's, like the metaphor of like doing inner work, doing all of that, finding yourself is being able to know what is the true thing that's coming through that is like a message or some guidance or something like that, as opposed to your subconscious voice running the show in there.
Right. So before I was with you, and when I was with past partners, and I was living still heavily conditioned, I had partners that the relationship was built on autonomy more than your average relationship is built on autonomy. But like, I had partners who did have a heavy agenda for what they wanted me to do. And I was still a people pleaser. And so if I put my foot down and was like, I'm doing this, they wouldn't get resistance. But I learned since then that I am heavily motivated to avoid conflict. And so you don't actually have to tell me what to do. You just have to imply you'll be disappointed in me, and I will navigate around that subconsciously. And so in past relationships, I still had, and even with my other people in my life, because I was a manifesting generator and didn't know it, I would get excited about something, start it, not finish it. And I was gathering tools for my toolbox, but like, I went to like a correspondence college to be a holistic health practitioner. Then I got certified as a hypnotherapist, and I'm just like, I didn't do anything, quote unquote, do anything with these things. I started comedy, stopped comedy, whatever. And I was so adverse to the judgment and the criticism that I would have these mental justifications for everything I was doing. And I didn't know that. Like, I can now look back and see that, but I didn't know that. So I would have mental reasons for why I was doing something, like locked and loaded, before sharing with someone else, where now I just go, I don't know, my sacral's into it, And so I understand that most people are like that. Most conditioned people believe that they have to have some sort of spin because the culture celebrates that. That's what the justice system is built on. Court, you just have to have the best spin. Marketing, you have to have the best spin. So we're all doing that. We don't even realize that we're doing that, and we're lying to ourselves, And so I just had the thing that we've been unpacking this week where I'm not sure that my sacral wanted to go take that stand-up opportunity. And now I'm looking back at the day I got the call, and I'm like, I think my mind made that decision, Because for me, the sacral, I know my sacral is activated because you can't fucking peel me off of it. There's something going on right now that like I'm thinking about it all day and I'm fucking working on it all day, and that's all my energy wants to do. The 2027 course is like exciting. I'm never feeling tired having to do it, whatever. So I said yes to the stand-up thing, but I can tell you the 3 things my mind thought. Like, oh, I always said I would do this if I got the opportunity. I would feel really bad if I missed out on this. Like, this is a part of who I am. But then I was crawling across the finish line by the end of that. And I'm still recovering from how that fucked up my daily walks, how that fucked up all these other things, where I think if I went and did something that my sacral was into, it shouldn't have disrupted my entire system, right? So I'm still, while being someone who is sober and thinks about this stuff and talks about this stuff 24/7 and does not have a lot of distraction, and is, 2017, I think, is when I really started waking up to my own subconscious shit, like a lot. I'd say it probably started in 2012, but I'm still experiencing things where I go like, oh, I don't know if that was honest. Like, I don't know if my mind made that decision. So
it's still deconditioning. I mean,
still deconditioning.
There's so much deep conditioning that's, very hard to discover,
Now, if I was doing copious amounts of drugs and my life was revolved around partying and I was hot and I was rich, it's just a lot harder. Like, deconditioning became infinitely easier when I stopped having so many people in my life and when I stopped putting myself around strangers on a regular basis. Because even now, if you put me in a fucking green room full of comedians I don't know, I'm fighting for my life not to mask, And what I had to do on this tour was just not talk. Because I'm like, oh, I don't quite know yet how to be myself in this moment because I'm in fight or flight because I don't know you motherfuckers, right? So, and I'm not a hot, rich celebrity. You know what I mean? So I'm not where that is like inherently, a spiritual celebrity, I guess I'll say. Like someone that a lot of people are perceiving. It's hard to decondition when you're being perceived. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean like people don't know. And that's the thing that drives me nuts about like public shaming or cancel culture or whatever it is. It's like most of the shit you're like, unless it's like overt SA, like sexual assault or something, most people don't know why they're doing the things they're doing. They're operating out of their subconscious. They don't know.
And we can call that authenticity at the time. It's like, I'm being authentic. Mm-hmm. But they're like running the conditions. That's what it's not easy. Like when I'm always talking about like, just be authentic and everything will be okay. People are like, okay, cool. I got it. I'm just being authentic. It's like, but you got like a lot of self discovery and like really always being open to like, this isn't me. There's more, there's something else here. That's being authentic,
right.
I feel like we never get to a point where it's like, this is my authenticity. It's always like slivers more,
Yeah, and so that's a part where I'm a little bit, when it comes to like healing and stuff, my perception of all this is that we're coming out of thousands of years of unconscious play in the Matrix, and that we will fully wake up again, but that it's going to take us like 1,000 years. And that's the work. Like that's the purpose of life. And then I think in the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix, that will become the purpose of human existence, is like, that's why I resonate with that Penny Kelly book. Cause she says like humans are just like, all they really care about is developing the human potential. And that is already like the people who listen to this podcast, like that's their focus. And that's like, it's what entertains us. It's what brings us joy, is kind of plugging it away. So I'm not searching through my consciousness to figure out, did I make a mistake by doing the comedy thing? Because I still learn from it, whatever. But I'm trying to understand the wiring under the board in my own consciousness. So next time I say yes to something and then have a panic attack the way that I did when I said yes to this comedy thing, I know like, that's now it's time to go like see if the mind is making a decision. It's deconditioning, So one thing that's tough about having a spiritual platform, that mistakes I learned 5 years ago in the soberish days, is that it takes a lot of work to remain a work in progress and to not allow yourself in your own mind to be elevated as someone who knows the right thing to do, or someone who is inherently so tapped in that you can't make mistakes. Like, I definitely fell into that pressure of needing to have an answer for things. I have an open head and ajna, and needing to not let the messiness of my own mistakes be seen, and so I had to kind of retreat for a while and come back and just be like, yeah, I changed my mind. I make mistakes. You're going to get to see the mistakes. Like, that's the vulnerability, whatever. But like, I'm not above people as like a spiritual guru or whatever. Like, I'm just a person in the going through the same process everyone else is. And I don't know Aubrey Marcus's stuff enough to know whether or not how he portrays himself in the day to day, but in this podcast that I watched, in his discussion of like ISIS telling him whatever, which like it's getting a lot of pushback because that's not how that works.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And so that's your own subconscious telling you that. And that's, if you've ever booked a session with me to talk about being psychically attached or psychically attacked, I'm going to tell you it's your subconscious. If you're telling me that you're channeling, some God and they're telling you to do whatever, I'm going to tell you it's your own subconscious. Even if you are tapping into something, it's most likely some sort of trickster that's fucking with you, because you don't know your own subconscious. Like, your subconscious is a hole in your aura until you start to become aware of it, which takes a long time. So, I don't even know where to start. So I have ADHD, and I apparently spaced out during half this for me to listen to an entire podcast is a miracle. So I was talking to Jaleesa about it last night, and then she was live tweeting it to me while she was listening. So I didn't realize there's a portion where, okay, well, first of all, I went and searched everyone's ages because I do think this is relevant. I do think adults consent when it comes to sex. When it comes to relationships, I just think before someone has had their Saturn return, they're not an adult. Like, that's my stance. If you ever booked a session, you've ever done a session with me and you're worried that you don't have your shit together enough and you're 27, I'm going to tell you, you're not even an adult yet. I believe that you become an adult in your Saturn return. That is really when you face the thing that kind of pushes you into adulthood. So I think that having sex with people in their 20s is fine. It's whatever. But when you're talking about a relationship between someone who is in their 40s and someone who is in their 20s, they haven't had a Saturn return yet. They don't really know themselves. So it's whatever. Do whatever you want. But it's a little bit strange to me. So he is 45. So he was 43 when this thing started. His wife is 37. So she was 35 when this thing started. That's a whatever age difference. It's actually how old we were when we met. And their girlfriend is just turned 27. So she somewhere in there. I don't know. That was a little bit hard. You have to go back and find the post when they go, my 20th time around the sun or whatever. And then you have to have ChatGPT do the math. So she was 25 when this thing started. So you just coincidentally, just, how ISIS works. She just wanted someone exactly 10 years younger than your wife. Right as your wife was turning that corner towards like becoming a mature woman.
Yeah.
God just so happened to, you have more love to share or whatever. So anyway, I didn't realize that there was a part in the podcast where they say on the second date, they gave her a God bomb, which is experimental.
That was a huge red flag to me. I'm like, whoa, on the second date too. I mean, like, what is the God bomb? First of all, they didn't really explain that, but you can kind of deduce it's some form of like drug stacking, some kind of experimental thing. And then they kind of said it was like breath work and light work, and we were doing, she's on a table. But that just felt very weird to me to do something that quickly. That's like, you're pulling somebody into your game, or like there's some kind of control. Again, all under the guise of this is this really amazing healing practice we've discovered, you know, and it's doing amazing things, which, you know, could be true too, but sketchy.
Yeah, so at this point, she's kind of a toy for them. Like, until he says, I think I'm supposed to, you know, Isis told me I'm supposed to have a baby with both of you. Like, she was kind of a toy for them as a couple to play with. Yeah, there's a lot of power dynamic stuff in this that, like, I've been through. Like, I've been on all sides of it. I've been the like, toy of the couple, and I've been a couple experimenting with other there's just a lot of potential for weird ass power dynamics here, and a lot of, like, I don't know. I think infantilizing any of these three adults is unnecessary, or like seeing any of them as victims, because they're all kind of working an angle on each other.
Yeah.
It's parasitic in all three. Like, I think she said she had not done plant medicine before.
It didn't seem like it. It seems like, I mean, and you did a little bit more sleuthing and the deep dive of these people, but it seemed like that girl has, it's like surface level spirituality, you know, law of attraction stuff, and not
and
this
her
deep, which again, like, is definitely amplified after your Saturn return. But yeah, I think maybe, you know, she was coming into their world, which was already heavily drug induced, heavily like external kind of magic for inner work. That
I don't think anyone in this scenario is doing inner work. I think,
yeah, that's what I mean. It's like the inner work is like, we do plant medicines all the time. And that's that mental thing. It's not really, that stuff catalyzes the ability to do inner work, but it's all external, you know?
Yeah, so I have such a weird relationship with, like, call out culture and stuff. I just think a lot of times it's people projecting, or, like, rather than focusing on themselves, they are hunting for someone to call out or whatever. So I think that's a lot of, like, why I was tiptoeing around yesterday, because I don't want to assign myself as some sort of righteous call out. But then I spent a lot of time watching, like, looking at comments and stuff. And I guess I do want to, I'm not going to go after them to call them out, but I guess I do want to, like, point out this type of spiritual guruism as predatory. There was someone in the comments who said, you know, I went to one of their retreats, which I have a, like, 85% negative opinion of retreats. I went to one of their retreats to find my divine masculine, which was heavily implied that it was marketed. It
was like a divine union retreat.
Yeah. Like, they're teaching people divine union. And okay, you know, that's fine. Like, I'm all about, like, here's what we got. Here's it's like what I try to do is, like, I can just teach you kind of the way that I did things, but the more I understand differentiation, the more I understand that, you know, you're only going to be able to engage with it in as so much as we are similar. But it was kind of marketed as, you will find your partner here. And then I would imagine it was probably like 90% women. It seemed like they have a shit ton of women following them because of this kind of fantasy that they can too have the kind of love that they have one day, which, you know, there's lessons for everyone here, and there's lessons for the people who are chasing what they have out of some projection, because there is a celebrityism to all of this. Like, these people are stupid rich, like crazy. Most of us are never going to know what that feels like rich.
Yeah.
And so they're living in a completely different fucking paradigm.
Yeah.
And this just goes to prove that it doesn't matter how many financial resources you have, you're still going to make up some dumb shit to fucking experience.
Yeah.
You're going to create some sort of pain. But I thought that was a part that we kind of left out of the conversation, is a lot of this is like just rich, hot people shit that, like, being that attractive, like, I don't find him attractive at all, but, like, the women are very attractive. That could just be, I'm pretty gay, but this is, hot people get wrapped up in a lot of it makes it harder for their spirituality to start to take like depth because of that. More prone to hedonism, rich and hot people. That's a sweeping statement, but in my observations, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than someone who's like hot and rich to like really take like depth. And I'm talking like dumb fucking rich. Like, I don't know, they're probably multimillionaires.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's got multiple companies. I think he comes from his father was like a big businessman, I'm pretty sure. So he probably even had like leverage to start those companies via his dad.
Yeah, and the vibe that I got, like if I'm really, and this is something I'm learning, because when I'm listening to someone talk, I'm always going, okay, what's a time that I did something like that? And what's a time that I was misunderstood when I, or like, why is this triggering me? Or why am I thinking like whatever? And the more I mature spiritually and emotionally, the like less judgmental I get, because I really do have like, I have done most shitty things,
That's why this is so interesting, because I feel like it's all, they're on display publicly, a lot of issues that like we all have dealt with and some people are dealing with, and that's why this is such a it's very helpful to watch this. And I think that's what is kind of beautiful underneath all of the muck and like projection and weird shit that they're doing. It's helpful to watch. And I think it's also, we were talking about this last night, it's easy to kind of call out all the dumb stuff, the paradoxes and the things that they're like masquerading as this is divine when it's obviously like a shadow thing. It's very easy to just get into the judgmental place and like knock them down. But there's a part of it that's like sad, because it's like, I feel like they have good intentions. Like they're at the core, they're trying to do something to help, and they're trying to like, share their journey to help other people. Like there's good intention there, but like they're really caught up in one of these false matrices, like these spiritual matrices that like build themselves and convince people that you are growing and healing and you're enlightened, but it's another trap. And it's like they're like fallen soldiers. It's like, it's to have compassion, be like, this sucks. I think it's also important to point it out and kind of be like, call the things out, because it is parasitic, and energetically it's like, saying, no, it's not that. And so there's a space to kind of like be funny around it and point out the ridiculousness of it, as well as being like recognizing like these people got caught in a really difficult trap.
Yeah.
And they set themselves up for that, and they've asking for it. And they're acting like they're not asking for it, that they're tuning into some, divine magic. So it's like, it's really complicated. But I think that's why it was so hard yesterday to talk about it. It's like, we're trying to like, not just be negative about it, and project onto it. It's very easy, because there's just a lot of paradoxes about it or whatever. But coming from that stance of like, this can happen to anybody, and we've all had it happen in smaller ways, not being super public and like being rich and having status, it makes it easier to move through those things. And that's why I think recognizing that this is like it's a difficult thing that they're going through. And it's hopefully, I keep thinking like, just with the response that has happened, there's so many people pushing against it. And in the comments, there's so many, there's a lot of projecting and like negativity in the comments, but there are a lot of people like dropping really great information and truths, like trying to mirror back to them, hey, this isn't it. This isn't it. Please, like, go deeper. And if they're reading those things, it's got to be affecting them in some way. And hopefully they can get a reflection back from the collective that is like trying to help get them off of that, and at the end, it has to be their decision. But I think that's like what this whole thing is kind of beautiful, is that they're publicly displaying this thing and showing their cards of that. They're like caught in this really difficult matrix trap. And by people engaging and giving their own information to them, they might be able to like see some of those harder truths. And so I think just saying that is like, before we maybe go into some really difficult like calling out of some of the things, that it is to try to like see them as fallen soldiers or something, that it's like they got caught up in something.
Yeah, but like I don't know these people and I don't care about these people. I'm never going to know these people. And so I guess where I think this is I'm someone who usually uses myself as an example. So when I'm pointing to something, I'm like, oh, here's how I've like that's shown up in my life. I think there's just a great mirror for a bunch of like subconscious stuff that is like totally normal and we all do it. But they were nice enough to put this on display so that we can go look at it and then kind of unpack it. But then also kind of unpack the way in which people are engaging with spiritual gurus, which has to end. So when we're talking about the end of celebrity, we're not saying every fucking celebrity is a bad person or whatever. The system is the people you've never seen. People keep defending Lady Gaga or whatever. I like Lady Gaga as an artist. I think there are plenty of artists in there that hate being famous and stuff. And that's not saying they're all bad or whatever. But the system, the gate-kept system is gate-kept for a reason. And it only lets you through if you do what they want you to do. And that is the thing we're trying to speak to. And not because it's a villainization of celebrities, but to point to the way that the power structure is set up and the way that we orient to the power structure.
And it's very loud in the spiritual world, too.
In the spiritual world, not quite gate-kept, but
it's gate-kept energetically is what I think. And
exactly.
Like you do, once you get super big, like his podcast is huge, very influential, and you have the potential in the spiritual community to actually wake people up and pull them out. If you get really big, you're getting distortions in the field of, whatever your communication is. All of a sudden, ISIS is coming through. That is like a higher energy trying to throw you off track and also throw off the people that are on the verge of waking up and redirect them into a different spiritual matrix. It's very difficult. And that's why I think, in some forms with this podcast is like, we're trying to slowly let it be what it is and not push it to be big and become this huge, because I know the dangers of it, the difficulty that comes, and it slips in so easily. Yeah. I think we both have the ability to kind of like discern that and know, but I think there is a part of us that is trying to take the slow train and what this podcast, how it affects people and let people come and find it. That's, I think, a much smoother way to continue our own growth, be transparent, and then also help people through that and not fall into that like guru thing.
Yeah, I definitely fell into that. Like Soberish blew up. I wasn't even planning on anyone like it being like that. It blew up, and then when the pandemic started, because I had had some downloads about metaphors of like whatever. And then when it seemed like the metaphors were coming true, I just remember people being like, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And I remember like actually like forcing myself to come up with predictions or whatever. And I was still so captured subconsciously by wanting everyone to like me or wanting to not be seen as a fraud. This is all very open head, open ajna stuff, but I didn't know anything about human design at this point, where I felt like I needed to know. And then I also felt like I had to have a take on everything that was happening in culture. And now I have deconditioned enough that it's like, you're not going to get my take as soon as something happens, usually like on something stupid like this. Yeah. But like, I sit with things a lot longer. I don't feel pressure to know things. I don't feel pressure to have a take. I don't feel pressure to share my downloads immediately. And then I don't feel pressure to be completely healed or without making mistakes or whatever. But I felt all of that back then. And when you feel all of that, you're more likely to create a spiritual spin for something that is maybe not so spiritual. Like everything's spiritual. Do you know what I mean? But it's the position that he's allowed himself to be in that is making him more like susceptible to feeling like he needs to say that ISIS told him that he needs to impregnate these 2 women rather than like I was horny at the gym. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, that's the thing I'm talking about, like with celebrity that is so subtle, it's subconscious. Like someone can be a great artist and a great person, but if they don't know the subconscious part of them that wants to be seen or feels like they need to know or feels like they have to have an answer, they go into a fawn trauma response and they don't know they are in a fawn trauma response. So a lot of your favorite celebrities, activism is a fawn trauma response because they're afraid of getting canceled. Like you don't have any fucking idea what it feels like to have, and nor do I, that many people projecting onto you, that many people observing you, that many people watching you, to where there's, if 1,000 people are paying attention to everything you do, there's 1,000 versions of you.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's like actually fame is actually a fucking nightmare.
It's insane.
And you have to do so much work to be able to handle. And as someone, and I didn't know this about myself, but because I grew up in an abusive environment, there was like a part of me that managed everyone's experience of me. And so I was like subconsciously making sure that I was never misunderstood and never whatever. Well, that's fine when there's 50 people in your life. But when all of a sudden there's 10,000 people paying attention to you, all like getting different impressions of you, and then you're starting to see that impression on the internet and you're getting emails and stuff and people are projecting onto you, it's like actually a nightmare. It's actually horrible when you're someone who has the trauma of like, it's actually painful every time you're misunderstood, because this part of you that when you had an abusive mother that was like, I have to make sure to keep mom from ever being mad at me, because if she's mad at me, I'm going to get hit or I'm going to get fucking screamed at or I'm going to get punished. Like that was an active, program inside of me. So when I get a fucking gnarly comment, that part of me like pops up and is like, danger, danger, we're going to get burned at the stake. And so this is why I pulled back at a point where spiritual influencers were like blowing up. I didn't post spiritual stuff on Instagram or whatever where I had a following. Like I pulled way back and let that wave happen without me, because like I realized like I can't, the parts of me that need to be liked and are afraid of being, disliked, not because like, we think of that so shallow, like I need people to like me, but it's like, no, that's like, my nervous system thinks I'm going to get murdered if I don't. So anyway, it's very hard not to be captured. Like audience capture is real. And, in the spiritual community, I think that what I would have respected in this situation, what I would have said, like, this is authentic, is a podcast where this dude would have been like, I'm not made for monogamy. I'm just not, because I don't think he is. I'm not made for monogamy. And I knew that. And then I selfishly pretended I was going to be okay with monogamy because I wanted this woman, because I do still have patriarchal, gross masculine programming that makes me want to just like capture what I think is the most attractive thing. And so I lied to you and I lied to myself and I convinced myself that I could be happy with just one woman. And then you aged. And that insatiable part of me that wants to keep conquering the youngest, hottest thing. And that's also very confusing for me because I'm very rich. And so even though I'm into consciousness stuff, all of the surface level shit of the old culture is still very much inside of me. So now I have a longing for capturing, conquering a younger, hotter woman. And I need to be able to continue to do that until I'm old as fuck and like it's really gross and I'm paying alimony to 50 different women. And so you need to be able to decide for yourself if you want to stay with me and do this, but like honestly, it's probably not what's best for you. And then if she was being honest, she could be like, well, this is really confusing because even though I knew you were polyamorous when we first got together, it's kind of hard to, decide what's best for me and not tell myself this is what's best for me when I have a history of men doing this to me. And also you come with multi-millions of yachts and everything else. And the lifestyle is also very confusing. And the story of us together and the increase to my status in this world, so that's also very confusing for me. And then we're also both of them being like, we're doing insane amounts of fucking altering with very little integration. And it is hard to integrate on a yacht. I'm sorry. You're not like grounded in reality, which is like, maybe that's what you came here to experience. That's fine. And then for the young one to just be like, I have no idea what's going on because I'm fucking 25 and y'all dosed me with fucking drugs the second time we hung out. I'm just here to have experiences, and she's probably, assuming nobody has kids, she's probably, she's just on a little bit of an adventure, and like your 20s are about getting your heart broken or whatever. So if everyone would have just come in and been like, we're horny, we're rich, we're hot. This is like, we live in a version of spirituality that is hypersexualized. And so that's kind of the place that we're hanging out. But the reality is this is his truth. But the like ISIS part and the God told me in spirit, like you found that chick on Raya. And
that's
then
what's so
you
frustrating to everybody is that like if they would have said that all honestly, that would have then shown people that, they're self-aware, they know themselves, they have integrated, and they're talking about this in a very transparent way. But
and if she's like, I can't let go, I'm not ready to let go.
Yeah.
And so I'm just right now using this as a mirror to work through my own jealousy or whatever. But like, what dogs do I have in the fight? I'm giving up a lifestyle. I'm giving up a dream I had of us together. I'm afraid of missing out. I'm not ready to watch you walk off into the sunset with this young woman. And so for now, I'm just going to put myself through this torture and try to get something out of it. Like I would have been like, carry on. Don't have kids, you fucking weirdos. Do not bring kids into this, but carry on.
Yeah, and it would have been helpful for people to then see that and go, oh, okay, well, interesting. You guys are like, I'm going to jump off this train right now. I'll watch from afar, but I'm not going to take this as, spiritual teachings and stuff that I need to follow. That's where I think a lot of people got messed up, is that they're presenting all of this as divine union and fucking radical monogamy, all these new words. That's something that we all need to strive for. And again, they're not saying like you need to prescribe to this, but that's what your platform is. That's what that you're an influencer. Like that's what's happening. So it's great that you're saying we're not trying to do that, but that's what you do. And that's where people it's this bypassing thing and painting this as all divine and some really great spiritual practice is where people are like, no, whoa, this is all off. And that's why the response is the way it is. And that's why it should be that way. But I think that's, if they were just able to be really truthful and honest and be in their emotional body and say those things, that would have been the sign to be like, okay, they're being honest and open. Great. Like no problem. Yeah. But
now they don't know these things. That's part
exactly. And that's why I'm saying that everybody's like, you're not integrated. Oh my God. Like that's not how it all works, And then they have all these narratives to respond to that. Well, like it's my truth. It's all these words that like are able to cancel out other people's attempt to help and point out like these are distorted things. These aren't lining up. Your words are right, but your actions are not following them. And it's why it's like a spiritual matrix. It's this weird thing that people get caught into and create a spider web of narratives, mental narratives around it to validate what they're doing as some higher thing. And it's so educational to watch, but it's so scary to like be caught up in that or to imagine being caught up in it, because it's a form of psychosis. It's like a real like difficult thing to see your way out of when you're creating narratives like that.
Yeah, and observing the whole thing, here's my 2 cents. It's not anyone else's place to tell them. You know what I mean? I'm discussing this to discuss like there's a huge mirror of consciousness traps here. And so that's fun talk about, but like the people in the comments who are like, no, please don't do this, are people who have given these people money or have like followed them. And this is just another example of like everything in reality is going to force you into your power. So the gurus will fall. If you have placed someone above you and gone, I want to get what you get based on some projected whatever. It's like, they also have that thing where you can tell there's an enormous amount of incredibly unhealthy fighting happening behind closed doors. Like where you have like a toxic relationship, and then when you frame it to people outside the toxic relationship, you're like, we have like a lot of stuff to work through, but it's like you guys were throwing shit at each other 5 minutes ago. Like I've been there. And so when they discuss conflict, it's obvious that the conflict is not the like mental compartmentalized like thing that they're promoting here. And it's in the words of my dad, you're literal strangers bringing your lives together. So like relationships have kinks to work out. And it's like not that fighting is bad, but you can just tell they're having massive amounts of power struggles behind closed doors by the way that they talk like people who are in a toxic relationship. And when they finally break up, you're going to hear how it's a fucking nightmare behind closed doors. But they are literal relationship guru. Like he has a book about like they're selling retreats. And so the people in the comments are people who have sought their advice to help them like have what they have. And now they're saying, now you're learning, people who have given your power to him and his wife, like you're learning that what they have is marketing, and what they have has run its course or whatever. Like maybe they had something great at some point, but this is why I am often trying to separate myself from the New Age movement, this part of it, where it's like a lot of divine union conversations are repackaged codependency. A lot of this stuff is like the thing that has really struck me is what he's doing here is exactly the blueprint of Joseph Smith at the beginning of Mormonism. It's just like literally like the man wanted to fuck the babysitter and said that God told me that we need to do this. There is nothing new and original about women orbiting a man being divinely told that he needs to have another beloved, vomit in my mouth, who is 10 years younger than his wife. It's conveniently the exact blueprint of polygamy in Mormonism. And then there's a whole thing where he talks about how pure the young one is that gave me really bad vibes, where he was saying like her purity, there were times where I was with her when I was really struggling with Vi. Okay, that's fucked up. If your shit's fucked up in your marriage and then you're going and spending the night with your girlfriend, that's fucked up. There's nothing ethical about that. Like you have to figure out your relationship before like you're just leaving her alone, who already has an abandonment wound, who's already been cheated on in several relationships, who doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And then you leave and you're staying with the girlfriend. And then he's like, and at any point she could have said, maybe this isn't going to work out between you guys, but she didn't because she's so pure, which is just, this is such everything fucking gross about patriarchal men. You're not like this at all. So I live in a bubble. Like my dad's not like this. Like I live in a bubble with like healthy men that I forget this is it's a fucking problem. But you're attaching purity and innocence. Yeah, because she's a baby.
And she's fawning. It's a trauma response.
Yeah, and it's like you'd be an idiot to do that in that moment because you're being pedestalized as someone who's very supportive of the relationship. So she could be non-confrontational. She could just not be an idiot, but it's like she's letting you lay in her bed while your wife is at home distraught. And I'm not I think that the idea of home wreckers is a fucking patriarchal concept. I'm not putting this on her, but it's like no one in this situation is actually as compassionate and empathetic as they are discussing.
Yeah.
Then at another point, he talks about, at that same point, the purity of the female, of the feminine, makes him be the masculine protector.
Yeah.
And this is this is such fucking high people shit. And then I think you're the one that had this point, like his wife has talked continuously about, like, she's never been in a monogamous relationship. She's had this thing come up where the man wants to be poly. And part of that's because you're in the fucking, like, the communities you're in, you know, stop going to Burning Man and you'll find someone who's a little more into monogamy. But she's monogamous and keeps getting forced into these polyamorous things, or she just straight up gets cheated on. And so she does not feel safe. I think you said this last night. Like,
yeah. It's the part like that really bugged me when I was watching that podcast was they're all like sharing their parts of the story, and it comes to Vi, and she is sharing the difficulty that she had, and she's sharing like, I've had trauma with not feeling safe, being cheated on, and she starts breaking down and crying. And you can tell it's like a real moment in her, like how difficult it has been for her to go through this and bend to his will. And at that time, she's saying, I don't feel safe. And then she paints it as like, but I'm trying to grow and I know I need to do this. But the way that like she's breaking down and there's like real emotion like trying to come through, and she's like crying and shaking, that he just sat there and watched it, and you can feel that like him doing that, he's kind of trying to hold space for her crying in a spiritual way and being like, but this is what we got to do because Spirit has told us. So you got it, you know? And then he's saying that's divine masculine. And like, the thing to me is like, that's not what it is. It's if in that moment, like if I was him, I wanted him to be like, just stop the podcast. Wait. Like just turn off the cameras. Are you okay? Like, we don't need to do this. You don't feel safe. And like, I respect you trying to kind of bend out for me, but this is too much. How can I make you feel safe? And that's not what he's doing. Like to deliver, like to be a divine masculine would be to say, if you want to be with her, if she's your divine feminine, have discipline, and she doesn't want you to be with other women. That's what like a real divine masculine can do. That can go, okay, you need safety. You need me to be just with you, and you can feel safe so you can step into your power and you can be the creative female that you're supposed to be. I will take this little thing and have discipline and not fuck the young girl, or not go
or break up with her and move on with that's polyamorous relationship.
Yeah, that's also honored. But like he's presenting as what he's doing as divine masculine. It's like the grossest thing. And I think that's why a lot of women are upset in the comments, because Vi used to represent to them this powerful, dominant, divine feminine that in that moment can like hold her ground and say, no, I'm not doing this because I need safety. And if you can't do it, I'm fucking moving on. And you're a weak man for not being able to have the discipline and stand up for your woman, like, and I think that's, that's what, I'm not trying to kind of say I'm divine masculine, but I think that's like what I've pursued with you. And when we're trying to figure out like where we are in alignment and not, you time and again have said that it's like, it's a similar thing. Like you need safety, you need to be in something that you can trust. And you're not going to be cheated on, or we're not going to open this relationship to have these like other relationships. And that is something at times where I've been like, oh, interesting. There's a part of me that wants to be able to explore that, but also I see that that's what you need. So like, I'm committed to that. And then that requires discipline to just be aware when there's like a lusting element in my mind that is like, objectifying other women, that we all have that conditioning, that thing that goes on, and realizing that's a point that's just like, I don't need to play that game. I don't need to do that, because if I do that, that's not honoring what you need as safety. And it's kind of, it's breaking the whole system. And that's what I was saying, I don't know if I said it yesterday, I think I did, about the idea of them sacrificing, when really there's like, it's discipline that's needed. And that's a lot of the spiritual path is like, it requires this like discipline in one's own life in certain areas that is only disciplined for a time where you're deconditioning the thing, and then it becomes integrated and it's not hard anymore, and you see the power that it creates. And so I think that's what is frustrating for me to watch, that him display as this like perfect divine masculine when you're not supporting the woman at all. You're making them bend out of their own safety, which is it's not allowing like the feminine to actually step into their power and be this creative force that is so needed in the world right now. He's captured them and once again like enslaved them out of their power, and calling that divine union or some other thing.
Yeah.
That needs to be called out, because that is a thing that's a pattern that like other people are watching that, and they will continue to do that and step out of their power. Women will, to think that that's what we need to do. And he's bringing this old conditioning of the like patriarchal system in to a spiritual space that's supposed to be divine union, and presenting that as divine masculine when it isn't. And that needs to be called out, because it's going to affect other people and like continue to make women not step into their power.
Well, and they're like orbiting him, you know?
Yeah.
So like, this is maybe overshare, but so when we first met, we were both, I don't know, skeptical about how long relationships could last, and had both experienced like feeling super in love at the beginning of a relationship and then realizing you weren't aligned, you know? And I am someone who knows I'm in love and going to have a long-term relationship very fast, but then, you know, you can never see someone clearly at the beginning. So it's not until you've been in the relationship for a bit that you go like, oh, we're actually not aligned in these 5 million things, whatever. So we were both like, maybe it'll last about 5 years, you know, we're just not going to promise forever to each other. And then we talked about if we made really good partners, but we're both people who need a lot of novelty, we're like, maybe we'll open the relationship at some point for like, you know, I am someone who my partner can have sex with other people, and it doesn't, like, once I'm settled in the relationship, that part doesn't trigger me, and it kind of, I think it's hot. And so I've had that in a lot of like past relationships. And so I actually got to a point where I felt settled in our relationship in the last year, and was like, yeah, so if you wanted to like add that, but I do get like, I'm not interested in like whole ass relationships with other people. And we just don't have the lifestyle, because we don't leave our house for like, casual sexual relationships with other people that don't involve like a deeper relationship than that, where like if you were still touring or whatever, I would like probably pretty quickly been open to you having sex on the road or whatever. And so I actually was like, you know, if you get to the point where this feels, I'm not there, but like, you know, I'm open to that. And then you were the one who came back and was like, yeah, I don't think I want to like I don't think I want to do that. Like, I don't think I want to add the extra energy or whatever to the relationship, because there is kind of a knowing that there is something nice here. There, more than nice, like there's something amazing that we've built. And it is, of course, even though I think it's hot, and I'm not someone who's possessive about sex or, you know, like insecure about my body compared to other women's bodies, or I don't have any of that. But it is still risky. It is still, you're adding extra energy that you could potentially fall in love with someone else, or you could, like, you're a projector. So when you unplug from me, even if you're plugging into, you know, the guy who's here to change out the HVAC, it is dysregulating, you know? And so it you didn't jump on that as a man. You didn't like jump on that and start, like every other partner I've ever had when I've said something like that, like they're on a fucking app 5 minutes later and you were like, okay, thanks. And then like called me while I was in Delaware and was like, hey, I just want you to, like, I don't want to do that. Like, I love you. I don't know if you want me to cut this out later.
No,
but,
that's
like,
fine. I mean,
I was trying to order a coffee and you were in my AirPods. Like, I love you. I'm satisfied in this. Like, I don't want to ever fucking bring some weird shit into this, which is just like not how most men are. And, you know, I really appreciate that. And I didn't offer that out of some sort of fawn. I told you at the beginning of the relationship, when I feel stable in the relationship, I'll let you know, you know? And then I feel very stable in the relationship. And, you know, but if I'm being honest, it's like, yeah, I'm not dying to add that to it. I don't know, you know, I feel like I have the novelty I crave with you in that we are both into the same things and we're both progressing. And so there's always something new and exciting in this relationship. I don't need to go add some outside chaos. And I'm also just not being led around by my kinks anymore. And so, yeah, it would actually be strange to add that to the relationship.
I think that's, for me, it was cool to see you offer that in like a genuine way. I've never been with someone that they're that independent and secure in certain things. You know, when it comes to sex, it's like obviously always like a jealousy hill that you have to climb. And I really enjoyed that like honesty. And then, you know, for me, there was a like, oh, cool. Well, if it's cool to know that if we ever get to a point where like that area of our relationship gets a little stale, that there's a way to still, you know, like satisfy that thing without breaking the connection and the deep parts. But as I just continued to kind of like, we moved forward, for me, it was like, it didn't make sense with me. Like it's something that I think is going more and more away. It's like getting less like influential over the male part of me that is kind of this like, that is just endlessly like that animalistic, like horny thing that's like always wanting to kind of like procreate with everything it's going away in a way that's not like, it's not as controlling. And so there's a new, like, I'm actually more interested in the like depths of like staying with one partner and finding all the different complexities that exist with committing to that. And then the other thing is, I think also like energetically learning about things just with sex is like that you're opening portals and stuff to your energy that like, I don't want to mess this up. And going to do that just for satisfaction of like an external thing, this like surface level thing, opens up potential problems in like what we have at home. And I think that's something a lot of people don't consider. I'd never have considered. But the more I just learn and like reading, it's like that's a huge thing, especially nowadays with like how much stuff is out there, whether it's like disease and so many things that are like fucking up people's energy. Just going to have that intimate relationship with another being, you potentially bring something back into your house without really being able to know and control that and clear it. And that to me is also like, that's just a real complicated issue that I think can destroy a lot of things. Just for what? For like a surface level satisfaction. So I can just go like come, you know, like sorry to say that, but it's like not worth it to me, you know? And I think it's not easy I think men are just, the sexualization of culture, it's purposely being done to like make us be like that. You know, it's taking advantage of a core primal instinct that is beautiful on some levels, but like I can sense it now. Like I can just see, like when you go on TikTok or Instagram, it's like, good Lord, like it's just thirst trap after thirst trap and like hidden in marketing and like so much of that I've realized is something you can start to have discipline with. And then there is this like the new knowledge for me that came in that was like, ISIS told me to stay committed with you.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed, you hear a lot in the spiritual communities, the consciousness communities, and I've had sessions with men talking about this. There is this push towards men to bridle that hypersexuality within themselves, and this push towards men to learn celibacy or semen retention or whatever, where it's kind of the opposite in these more fundamental, like Abrahamic things or whatever, where the onus is always on the woman to dress less slutty or to not attract the men or to not snare the men. And it gives me hope that men are starting to take responsibility for whether or not you get women pregnant. Men are starting to take responsibility for being led by that sexuality or their addiction to objectifying women or whatever. Like, that to me is divine masculine. Like, that to me is men starting to understand the ways in which they are wired, have been exploited to make them be toxic in this thing. And so to me, it isn't that he fell in love with another woman. It isn't that he wants to continue. Like, he's a hedonist. Like, that's that brand of spirituality. It's not my brand of spirituality. It's not about, it exists and it's a valid, I guess, in its own thing. But I wish it would be marketed that way. And I wish that, responsibility would be taken for, like, that brand of spirituality is about it's very material. It's very like drugs, sex. What do we look like? Like,
it's very external satisfaction, gratification.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is like that in general is like something I've had to work on for a long time, not just with sex, but with drugs, with anything external. And the more I do that, the more like there is this deeper balance. But the sexualization, the exploitation of that is wild in culture. And it is dangerous. Like you pay attention to it a little bit, and it kind of creates this like imaginal space that you get to explore, in this like lustrous way. That then like doing that too long, it does really come into focus and starts to make you want to like go outside the boundaries of a relationship to satisfy that thing. It's like a weird mind virus or something that is crazy. It's like really, I lived with that for a long time, not thinking that was detrimental to like relationships. But the more I learn about myself and all the like subtlety of that, it really is, it's so powerful to adhere to. And there's a weird, never mind. I'm not going to make this point.
All right. You got to get on the road soon.
Oh, and so, yeah, can we get it? One of the things, left turn real quick, but that you discovered last night about dude.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Dude that we haven't really brought up. The weird dude that's in this podcast that's like their doctor or their fucking other guru. Jessa found out some interesting information about this dude's history.
Yeah, why is it so fun to like just fucking internet sleuth? Okay, so my first psychic power ever was after being molested for years as a kid. I can smell a perv from a million miles away. Like, I am never surprised to find out that someone is a sex pest. When someone says, I'm like, yeah, I could have told you that. And so I used to, when I first woke up, like try to explain to people when I was explaining how psychic abilities aren't like a loud voice in your head, it's a vibe, that everyone I know who's ever been molested as a kid can smell a Chester from 1,000 miles away. So they have this guru, this relationship guru, who's the one who coined the phrase radical monogamy. They're like coaching them through this. And he made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And when I was listening to the second half of the podcast, I would skip every time he was talking.
I was like, doing the same thing. I was just blasting through.
I don't fucking like this dude. And I don't like new age guruism anyway. So this is like, I'm not very plugged into this, and I hate that like what I talk about gets like lumped into the, I don't know that it does, but like this is why I'm constantly separating myself from the New Age movement, because these are like the celebrities of the New Age movement, and it's this, right? So anyway, I can't stand this fucking dude. So last night I found someone said, look him up on YouTube and Dr. Phil. So this dude was on Dr. Phil. He is an ex-rabbi. His name is Mark Gaffini, I think. Mark with a C. And here's a clip.
Do you think that given the situation with Sarah, you're 19 and she's 14, now you're 24 and this girl is 16, still a child in the eyes of the state, and whatever happened certainly was sexual in nature. Both of those are crimes in the eyes of the state, misdemeanor, felony, whatever.
They're both misdemeanors in the eyes of the state.
You're saying that these people that are out to get you have just made up this smear campaign out of whole cloth.
So A, right, I did both of those things wrong. B, I've taken total freaking responsibility for them in any way I can. C, right, they've completely and blatantly, and I'm going to use the word again, absolutely lied about what happened, and the best thing I could do was to do polygraph. 4, there's a smear campaign. And those two things are unrelated, right? Both of them are true. And it's what more can I do? And tell me and I'll do it, than taking direct responsibility, right? But I can't take responsibility for something that's completely wrong.
This did not happen when you were 15. This happened when you were 24.
31 years ago and 36 years ago.
Then we now jump to 2006.
Please.
That wasn't 31 or 36 years ago. That was 10 years ago.
Right.
And we now have the situation in Israel.
Right.
And we're talking about women there that are complaining about harassment. You decide to explore this polyamorous lifestyle where you have multiple relationships with different women and you don't tell any of them about it, correct?
Right, and they'll tell you exactly what happened. The facts were, right, I was not in any exclusive relationship with anyone. Right, actually they were more like, I mean, if I would kind of describe it, it was more like a kind of Woodstock scene, and we occasionally had sexual relations or sexual encounters. I wasn't dating any of the women and not telling them about other people, right? What I was trying to work out what my relationship was to sexuality. What was the relationship between monogamy and polyamory? And I think we have, and we'll probably disagree about this, which is fine, but I'm here to be just straight, right? I'm not here to convince you or to have you like me or not like me. I just want to say the truth, right? My entire life, and I've tried to figure out, right, does monogamy work for everyone? Right? I think there's a lot of lies about marriage, right? We've kind of made it a holy grail, and it's a beautiful way to live. Monogamy is gorgeous, but it's not the only way to live.
Radical monogamy, baby, right there. Oh my God.
Yeah. A radical
Weaver of webs. It's like the trying to weave a narrative around, like, you know, fucking child predator stuff as if it's, oh, they were all lying too. It's a smear campaign is also true. Yeah, but wait a minute. The thing that's like most awful in the situation is that you were messing around with children, dog.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think he's my age, and there were definitely adult men having sex with me when I was a teenager, and it was unfortunately not nearly as frowned upon as it is now. I mean, it's something I experienced multiple times. Like, I was 15, and men were 2 of them were 24, one of them was 32, and it happened a lot. Like, that very short period of time where I was unsupervised while my mom was on drugs, or just like men in the neighborhood or whatever. So definitely happened a lot back then, but I just don't know that this is the relationship advice. Like, I'm definitely someone who is questioning the relationship paradigms. You know, I'm literally working on a project right now that challenges a lot of those relationship paradigms. And I think that people are looking for something new, which is why Aubrey Marcus and his wife can charge, I should have looked that up. I don't even know how much for these things, because people know it's got to be something new. And so they're looking for it. And that's, like I said, I'm fine if these consenting adults want to figure that out amongst themselves. But I just think when you have millions of followers and people looking up to you, actually, you know what? I don't know. Like, the lesson here for the people that follow them is stop following people like that.
Yeah.
Like, stop pedestalizing people. Stop looking at multimillionaires and being like, I want to love like that. Because first of all, you don't know what it is behind closed doors. And second of all, like, a lot of the ease that appears to be in their relationship is literally the result of like drugs and insane amounts of money that like you don't have. So you're not like, you know what I mean? They're not like, let's have him say ISIS told me that we're supposed to be together and he's a plumber. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's run that past your wife and you don't have a ton of money and status or whatever. Like, this scenario may not be playing out the same way.
And it's like time and time again. I can't think of one person that was like seen as a guru, an all-knowing practitioner of the sacred arts and yoga that like generated a lot of followers that didn't diddle people or didn't do some weird thing. Like,
yeah, because
that power is corrupted, and it always is.
Yep.
But yet a big part of that issue isn't just the gurus, it's the people that are susceptible to it and follow again and again and again and like go after it and give up their authority to these people. That's what I'm saying, is like a weaver of webs is like, the dude's corrupted, but is able to talk about it in an authentic way and like loft up above it and give you this narrative of why it's an evolution in our relationships. And that's where the trap is. It's like, we all want that, but like we're getting it from a person that has like shadow things he's been playing out and is trying to be authentic and honest about those things and weave a thing around it that says it's okay because this is outside the bounds of what you guys know of as relationships. This is a new form. And of course I'm going to get smeared because I'm trying to break the old habits. And that's what all the heroes do. That kind of shit is like, that's what gets everybody.
Yep.
And it's always the gurus that do it. And it's celebrity power, all that stuff. It's like, it's one of the hardest, like it's this matrix trap thing, but like, it's a bunch of unhealed people that are also like part of that issue that just fall into it and want to be saved or want to be taught how to do it when the safer path is like figure it out yourself. It's self-taught and discernment and seeing these things for what they are and being able to observe them for educational information on how not to do it, where the traps are, how nuanced it is. But not get pulled into the pedestalizing of these people and wanting what they have. Yeah, it's wild, dude. Like when you found that he was a pedo, I was like, oh my God. And they, to them, I think he was supposed to be, they hired him for their Dharma teacher or whatever, and then it blended into this as like a relationship coach. It's, all the writings on the wall right there, man. That's what that book, Radical Monogamy, is like how to, whatever. That's just fucking wild. I couldn't believe that was the twist that took.
It's polyamory and it's non-monogamy and it's not even ethical. I can't say in this situation it's really ethical for several different reasons. I just want to make sure we got all of our notes.
I was just checking. I think we did.
Yeah, it sounds like we covered all the bases. Well, this is going to be a 5-hour episode.
I think in the end, it is this thing where it's like really fun to talk about these things and like look at all the horrible parts of it and point out, the paradox of some of these things and like what is like false light and kind of this spiritual matrix. But again, it is like, there's a part of me that is like, it's tough. It's sad. It's like, there is a genuine part of them that I'm sure is like really trying to be. No,
I think they are doing the best they can with what they've got. And they just, it's where they exist. for the people who follow them, it's up to you to fucking like discern who you're following and why you're following. So the people who are following them are like, I trusted you. It's like, well, this is on you. You need to take responsibility for yourself. Why are you pedestalizing? It's because they're attractive, because they're rich, because they're put like every picture is them on a yacht, and then they're saying a bunch of mental stuff. But if your discernment was locked in and you were using critical thought, it's like, I'm lonely. I want to have a good relationship, and they appear to have a good relationship. Although, like, I don't see what's going on behind closed doors, but I am also conditioned to think that hot, rich people have their shit more together than me. So like, as in your deconditioning process, it should be like, people who just constantly talk about authenticity may not necessarily be authentic. And I understand that we talk about authenticity a lot, you know what I mean? But like, if everything you're saying, like, if I took everything they said in this at face value, they come off smelling like a rose. And I get it, because I've been there. And it's the people calling them out in the comments, you're actually calling yourself out, because they don't have to listen to you. They're on their own journey. They're going to figure it out. I know when we've done stuff that was, you know, short-sighted and we weren't considering every position, people tried to, you know, point it out to us. It's like, you can't, I had to sit with it and fucking see it. You know, when people point things out to me, you know, if it's like, if I fucking could see that, I would have seen it myself. So sometimes it takes time to look at it or whatever. They're going to play this out. I hope to fuck they don't bring kids into this, because neither of these women have had babies. So you don't know about
it's going to change the
hormone
game.
shifts, postpartum depression. And if you think this fucking partying, fucking doing drugs bro is going to stop doing that to be a father, you're out of your mind. There's one part of the podcast where he says, like, she had some big important performance or something, and he's like, you know, as a psychonaut, my role is to just like push the edges. So I was recovering from a trip, you know, that was really intense, and so I wasn't able to go support my wife in her performance. And so she left Alana to stay with me. And that's where I realized, like, it really leveled up to the next thing. And I really needed this to be a full relationship. And it's like, this is insane,
weak
dude.
Ass shit, dude. It's so crazy.
It's not. And it's all about him. It's all about, like, you left her because you did drug. You're doing drugs. Like, I do think that plant medicine has a spiritual place. I do not. I'm just going to be honest. I do not think that altering every fucking day is spiritual. And I don't,
and that's what like is needed is like, you know, like you being that feminine power that like call people out for that shit. Like, that's what I thought a lot about too, is like, how are they getting away with doing these drugs all the time? And specifically that story, it's like her art is doing this sound healing thing, and she's doing a performance, and dude can't show up because he was doing some drugs. How is she not like, hey, maybe we should stop doing the drugs so much, maybe, because this is like affecting
grandpa, you're fucking 45.
Yeah, and like actually stepping up to the plate and saying something, you know, like that's what is needed on both sides. Masculine and feminine is doing that in the proper ways with compassion and like helping grow. But like, I don't see either side of these people really embodying that divine masculine feminine thing. It's like it's posturing as if they are, but like, frankly, it's weak ass shit to me.
And it's all like, you and I are navigating the authenticity, right? So it's like, if I want to go do something and you don't want to go do it, I want you to authentically be like, I don't want to go do it. And so like early in our relationship, because you were going through burnout, you didn't ever want to leave the house. And so I would go out to lunch all the time by myself. I had to leave. I left town. I traveled a lot without you. And I still travel more than you do. But we did eventually reach a point in the relationship where I was like, yeah, I'm not sure if I just like always want to be alone every time I leave the house, you know? Is this like permanent or, you know? And then it kind of made you realize like, oh, I am just kind of contracted here, and it does mean something to you, which then makes it mean something to me. So then it wasn't like an obligatory thing, but you did realize like, oh, I'm recovering from being a people pleaser, doing what everyone else wants to do, and now I've like overcorrected, and now I won't. I think one time I needed to go move stuff, and I I got Dan Donahue a plane ticket instead of you. And then you were like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I should be helping you move.
I
And I'm
should be
like,
the one.
I've been waiting to move for 12 months and you haven't wanted to leave the house. And then I kind of like made you realize like, oh, I'm up my own ass or whatever. And so I am someone who's like, you shouldn't do it if you don't want to do it. If you don't want to ride to the airport with me, stay home, whatever. But there is kind of a natural, like, if I'm going, when I just went and filmed this comedy thing, it's a no-brainer. You're coming with me, right? And maybe that's my own conditioning around relationships, but it just seems really convenient that because you're a psychonaut, you're busy. Like, why did you do a trip right before her thing?
Yeah, there's so many questions. It's like it's not a mature kind of decision-making thing. You happen to be doing them while she had her thing. You couldn't recover, and now you're at home with the young girl. Like I just got the vibe like that they did some weird shit at home because it's in all of that. Yeah, it's just children running around in adult bodies.
Yeah, I don't think this man is built for like the commitment of like marriage, whether it's any version of it, and I don't think he is still into his wife. Like at the base of it, this is a man who wants to like debauchery. He wants sex, drugs, pretty things. Shallow, surface level, intellectualized spirituality.
It's external validation. It's like when you're needing that external thing, like I'm telling you, I like experience this within the band, getting money, getting stuff, you get access to things. Everything, when you're searching that way, there is no end because everything gets old after a little bit. And like that's what seemed to happen with the wife that he like needed. So he acted like he was going to be monogamous because he needed that specific woman. And then it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Before that beautiful, perfect thing that you got starts to have cracks and patina on it that like you're no longer satisfied with. And then you need something else. It's just with everything. It's with physical things, houses, cars. It never ends. You always have to level up. And it starts to become really scary when you get to a point where it's like you can't fill the cup anymore. That's where it starts to get really dark. You get into like adrenaline seeking stuff because it's the only thing that gives you some kind of high and satisfaction. And it can get very dark very quickly. And that's, it's a route for some people to figure out like they have to get to that end of that rainbow and then wake up. But that it seems very clear that's what he is in.
That's his vibe. That might just be who he is.
Yeah.
I saw someone doing his astrology chart and he's probably not built for monogamy. And here you have an opportunity to be authentic and never fucking lie to another woman and say that you're going to be monogamous and then wake up to the part of you that is very patriarchal. You're very fucking patriarchal. They just keep getting younger and hotter. Mm-hmm. That's not a coincidence of like destiny.
Yeah. And I still think there's something about monogamy because I'm all about this idea of like exploring new ways of relationships and new ways to express love and connect and intimacy. But I think the old patriarchal, like committed, lawful thing of monogamy ain't it either. I just don't think we've had a good example of like what a spiritual, energetic monogamy looks like. And I think that that's not as rigid as one would think. There's like a lot of openness to that, and to be able to explore and, gracefully get on and off a timeline of being together. And there's something to that I think is what we're actually looking for, but we're haphazardly going into like polyamory and all these other like weird, complicated things when we haven't even figured out how to love ourselves yet. Like you can't, it's hard to do those things. So there's something to like a more energetic spiritual monogamy that I think is the path forward that we're all looking for. But like, and there needs to be maybe a new term. It's not radical monogamy, but at least not anymore because they ruined that term. But it isn't, I don't think it's like super far outside the bounds of like a committed, some kind of committed like relationship that like is also open and autonomous. There's something there. I think that's what we're looking for. It's not this soup of
Yeah, it's weird because you got to go, but it's like the story where he had to stay home. The thing I want to point out, because I think he should do what he wants to do. I just think he should be honest with the people that he's with and let them make decisions based on like authenticity. And he spins everything. That's the thing that's bugging me. So it's like, the truth is you got whacked out on psychedelics and then you couldn't go with her, but then you maybe also didn't care to go with her to support her. And if she's performing all the time, it's like, yeah, maybe you just don't want to go. And that's a completely different conversation. But what he said was, I'm a psychonaut, as if that's like a fucking day job. I'm a psychonaut and I push the bounds. And so I don't think he was high at the time. He was recovering from a trip. And so the authentic truth to that is like holding the actual paradox, which is like, I didn't want to go with her to the thing. That's the truth. I didn't want to go with her to the thing. We don't need to hear that you're a psychonaut and so you were completing your fucking duty. Like, it's the spin. It's, I am not a monogamous person. And I thought I could make myself be monogamous because I was so attracted to this woman. And I have now learned that like I'm not capable of doing that. So I'm never going to tell another woman that I'll be monogamous. And I understand that I get very swept up in honeymoon phases. And so I'm not going to do that again. Like, that is like so fucking respectable to me, because it's like, you're not trying to come out of this looking like a hero. And I get it, because we all do it. Like, I get it. But it is like, I don't know, I'm just judging off of this one podcast, and we could be completely projecting. I feel like I spent the first half of it being like, I'm projecting, but these are all just new world words and new world phrases being put on top of the exact same turd. You're just polishing a turd. Like, this is just patriarchy. This is just women orbiting men. This is just you getting messages from divine that like clearly she didn't get, because if she got it, it wouldn't have fucking devastated her. She wouldn't have had to take 3 months of a fucking break from you.
It's so frustrating. Just get off the throne, you fucking man, you dude. Like, it's so cringy to watch. Like, and it's always it's a masculine mental thing. They put a spin on everything that then like energizes the woman, and then they have to like bend to it, being like, okay, this is in service of the divine, when it's like the female has like so much more potential, and it like, let them lead the fucking thing for once. And it like, it's just, yeah, it's so frustrating, the weaving of the fucking narratives around the two females. And like, I hated that he was the one that told that story in the podcast. If it was like the women and their power telling that story, it's like a whole different game. It would have just seemed, it would have come across very different.
He sets it up to make himself look perfectly good, and then he hands the mic to her. She immediately fucking cries.
It's like, dude, stop the podcast. Like, what the fuck are we doing? It's wild.
Yeah, so I don't like it, and there's nothing spiritual about it to me, other than, you know, it's everything is spiritual. Everything we're experiencing is spiritual. But the fucking trying to turn it into some sort of, I don't know. I mean, I guess everything's just messy and lessons, but you know, I don't like it. It's not my vibe. So I'm glad we spent 3 hours unpacking it.
Yeah. The Gossip Podcast.
So anyway, a lot of people have reached out to me asking for an actual human design reading, like the mechanics part, and it's above my pay grade. And so my 30-year-old daughter is doing professional human design readings now. And so I linked hers on my website. She's really into the not self hierarchy, which I think we might talk about on the next episode, because I have learned a little bit about it, and it's like opening up so much for me. And that's on my website, jessereed.com, under human design readings, not for me. And Mark has sessions, and I have sessions, and the 2027 course is I don't think it's available right now, but.
And I'm more into doing, now that we got Coco doing all these human design sessions, I still offer stuff for projectors, but I think I've said it before, I'm really vibing on the creative to creative sessions, or just chat about consciousness. So if that's, I'm into that right now. So if you're looking for help or guidance in that, that's, you know where to find me.
That's where you're feeling excited.
That's where I'm vibing and excited out. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Love you. Bye.
Bye.